Greetings. This is the Counter-Racist Evolving Engineer Program. The acronym for the program is CREE, C-R-E-E, and that is my handle. The date is April 2nd, 2015. We are back for Part 2, which I know a lot of people are very, very enthusiastic about. That was probably the best, I'm being tentative, that was the best received program that I've had in over a year. I don't come on that often, but no, it was very well received, and I was pleasantly surprised because it was a meaty subject. It was a meaty type of content, and so I was really very surprised that so many people were enthusiastic. And not only were the audience numbers really, really good, I just got reams and reams of positive feedback. So we've entitled this program just Part 2, Advanced Black Thinking and Doing. Advanced Black Thinking and Doing Part 2 with Kofi Lion, which is the name that I know him by through Facebook. And he's just so thorough, as somebody who has put together a global database, which you heard the ad for at World Afropedia. I don't have to write outlines for the discussion. He actually just gave it to me. So I had kind of done one, but he'd done one I think that is better. So we'll be using his. And so if you're reading along in the program description, that gives a really good outline of what we're going to discuss. It's good, but Kofi's is better, and it's going to differ a little bit. So it's almost like, if we say that we're doing advanced black thinking, then you should sort of expect that this is kind of like a seminar, maybe a weekend or college seminar. And so we're going to give you a little bit of a syllabus or an outline of what we're going to discuss this evening. So what Kofi gave me, and I think it's great, these are the things that we're going to be running through, and this is going to be just going into more depth of what we talked about when Kofi was here 2 weeks ago. So we're going to be talking about data management, and I really don't know what that is. Kofi will have to say. Digital technology, I have a bit of an idea, and so if we break that down into, he's going to talk about Bitcoin, something called Litecoin, which I've never heard of before, and cryptocurrencies, which if you listen to the last program, you will have some basic idea of what that is and how this technology can affect the lives of black people. We will talk some more about Mandombe script, which is an African writing script, the oncoming digital dark age in some more depth. We did kind of glance off of it 2 weeks ago, but we're going to go into greater detail this evening. And then some ideas and suggestions on how to make money on the Internet from somebody who's doing that, which is Kofi. And then racism in Wikipedia, which is, is rife, and we're going to discuss why it is important, why that racism in Wikipedia is important, and how we can mitigate their practices. We have World Afropedia, and that's a big part of mitigating it, and I would imagine that Kofi's going to talk to some extent about other ways that we can do it actually in Wikipedia. Wikipedia is really the primary source of, it's the primary reference source online, and since so many people spend so much time online, it's really competing out there for the primary reference source on the planet. And so I just reminded myself of what I said to Kofi before we were chatting briefly before we got on the air, and I said I'm going to work harder at modulating the speed of my speech, because what I had told him was that as I listened to the program that we did 2 weeks ago, I realized that I was speaking much more rapidly in that program than I recall ever speaking before. And so I think that may have had some impact on how well people were able to follow our discussion. In addition to that, Kofi and I were discussing the delay in transmission and reception. So there was some not breaking up, but running into each other where it sounded like maybe he or I think principally it was me, was being very interruptive, and that we were not allowing the other to finish. And a lot of that has to do with not being able to gauge when one has begun, when the other person has begun, and the other person has ended because of the delay. So bear with us on that. And then lastly, as a little housekeeping, we know that as constructive as this program is attempting to be based on what happened last week and also what happened at the beginning of this program where I was unable to use the regular Skype call-in from the switchboard, we please don't get out of sorts. If for some reason transmission drops, Kofi might get bumped off the air. I might get bumped off the air, but we're going to keep trying at it if you will just hang with us. If that happens, and hopefully it will not, but I mean, you should expect that it might. If that happens, rest assured that Kofi and I have arranged ways to get back in touch with each other and get back on the air. So if you'll just, hang with us, maybe go to your refrigerator, get something to drink, we'll be back with you. So without any further ado, Kofi, are you there? Without any further ado, Kofi, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes. Sorry.
Good.
Okay. I had also said too. Let me congratulate you on there are basically two ends of life that I want to reference. I was very, very happy to hear that Kofi and his wife are expecting their second child, and I've seen so many photos and videos of their little one, and it's just delightful. And if you want people, sometimes I think the wrong people of us, really even of us, I think the wrong people, first of all, we're not having enough children, and we're not having enough that are in the of the right mind frame, but definitely of us sometimes think that the people who should be having more children are not. And I'm so very, very happy that Kofi and his wife are the couple that's having a second child. And at some point in this program, I will acknowledge the other end of life, the other spectrum of life, which is the passing on of important people. For some reason, I'm just really of that frame on. I'm very emotional about it. I have no idea why, but the mother, who I never met, the mother of someone who's really been important to me in terms of my development, and this is somebody I've never met in the flesh either. His mother passed away yesterday, and his name is Peter Brown, and he was a facilitator for a course that I was taking in solar energy. His mother passed away, and for some reason, the way that he's communicated his affection for his mother over the years and the pictures I've seen, and so I have no idea why I've been so deeply affected, but because of that, I'm going to play a song in tribute to her, which I found out through Peter was his mother's favorite song, and that will be in tribute to all of the listeners' mothers who've passed away, or anybody who's really important to you, including Dr. Ben. Okay, now to the meat of this. Let's go. So we what we started with last time was the digital dark age, and you explained what that was, and we kind of went through that in a cursory way, what the dangers were. But I think you thought and I thought it would be a good idea to really just get into the idea, the meat of what is a dark age period, and what does that do to people, and how does that affect us as Black folks? So take it away.
Okay. So I'm a student of history. I'm an educator. I've been teaching 4th through 8th grade out for the previous 5 years. I've been doing that, and now we've decided to start homeschooling in our area. So I'm just a forever teacher, and I'm cool. I like it. I in the future I plan to do university teaching. So it's right up my alley. The reason why I bring that up is because historically there are a few dark ages that we can look at, and we can kind of gauge what and the next dark age will look like. And I don't really think it's an if, but rather a when. It's going to happen. Societies rise and fall all the time. It's been happening forever, and the society that we're in now, the United States, has only been like officially up on paper around for maybe 200 and something years. It's not very old compared to other societies in history that we can look at are very old. And I want to go over 3 dark ages so we can maybe think about how it might look over here. The first dark age I want to go over is the one that happened in India. It happened from about 2000 BC until maybe recent times. They're just starting to come out of it, and maybe they're still in it right now. The second one I want to talk about is the dark age that happened in Europe after the Roman Empire fell, and the third one I want to talk about is what happened in continental Africa after the Arabs and Europeans got in and started to destroy libraries and so on. And from there we can kind of understand what might happen over here. So so in India, 3000 BC, before white people were running amok on the planet, there were black people, dark-skinned people there who were very advanced. They had indoor plumbing. They had toilets. They had cities. They had writing. They were very advanced compared to other people around the world. They were on par with a lot of times how we think of ancient Egypt. They were on par with them, and I've come across some information that suggests that they may have been in contact, sharing notes back and forth, which is why they were able to be so advanced. Okay, and eventually around 2000, around 2600 BC, somewhere around that range, about 4,000 years ago. BC is before the Common Era. We're in the Common Era today, so about 4,000 years ago, white people started to gather around the north, where the main society, the Harappan society, it was in the north of India, along the river, around the Indus River. They gathered up and they began to destroy dams. They began to have incursions into their cities, and they just began to really destroy what the Harappan people had built. Most of the history is written in the Rig Veda, which is a long spiritual historical document that the Hindus use as one of their spiritual books. The Rig Veda is very long. I have it on World Afropedia too. I'll start sharing some of the historical references there. But anywho, the Aryans, as they're called, the Aryans started to come from the north and destroy everything there. They destroyed dams, they burned down libraries, they enslaved people, killed people, and after hundreds of years of that, the Indians moved from their Harappan civilization and they moved south, and they kept going south. Every time they go south, the white people would come and destroy them again, and so on. It got to the point where all over India, a new social system was instituted. While the black people were the kings and queens of their society for as long as they were there, during this time, their position was shifted from top to bottom. They became the slaves, they became the cleaners, they became it got, to this point, you'll find what they call them untouchables now. The people who they call untouchables in India are the same people who were the Harappan people who had the advanced society so long ago. You'll find them, they clean waste. They go through garbage dumps to find things that they can eat or buy and sell. It just is a complete 180-degree change from where they were. And
so you're saying that
Go ahead.
There we go with the delay. And by the way, there I can hear the echo a little bit now. So you're saying that what you're saying is that what is called the Dalits of today,
right,
or what
right.
Are actually the descendants of the Harappan civilization.
Okay, I'd say that a lot of them are. Now, those Dalit people, they existed all over the Indian subcontinent back then. So some of them were already in the south, but some of them lived and some of them still live in the north. But the Harappan civilization was a branch of those Dalit people, correct? The language that they spoke is linguists have found that it is pretty much the same as the language that of the Dalit languages spoken in India today. It's exactly.
Okay.
And I think that they were able to shift that because they controlled the information. Hundreds and hundreds of years of telling somebody that they're nothing. They're they're Varna. Varna is a concept in the Indian spiritual system that says that it's almost like if you have any Star Wars fans, the Force in you, it's a whole bunch of microscopic things inside of you that tells how strong, weak, good, bad you are. Varna is how good and bad you are, and they say that those people have very little of it, and the Aryans, the more lighter skinned people, have a lot of it. And so, judging by your level is where you are in the society. And since the Dalit people are so bad according to their system, they always come at the bottom of the society. You can draw a lot of parallels with how we are treated today. It goes to show why maybe that the English people were able to connect with the Indians so well and build that society over there so well, because they went there. They said, "Oh, you have racism already. Oh, you have
right.
you already know black people, dark people are no good. So good. We just gotta come and prop you up a little bit, give you some weapons, and just keep doing what you're doing." And since we're
So
more white than even,
no, please go ahead.
Yeah, and since we English are even more white than you, judging by your own system, then we should be in fact be on top of you. And I suspect that the Indians, they saw that and they had to agree. You can't really disagree if English are coming with their weapons and and all of that. And then you're left with the system, and that's why I say that they might still be in a dark age, because the people on top in India today are the same people that came down from the mountains of Afghanistan and Pakistan, that came down from those mountains and attacked the Indus Valley civilization.
So that goes to what you were discussing last week, what we were discussing in terms of your brain computer being programmed. There's a platform, there's some sort of platform that's been installed on their brain computer by virtue of their language, what's in their languages, that makes it such that the paradigm of light, dark, and even the way we're thinking about it, which, is a little bit troublesome, because we're calling ignorance dark. So that right there tells you that our brain is still programmed that way. That if something's ignorant, then that it's dark. Because there are different ways to be blinded. Of course, you could be blinded by too much brightness. But that Indian civilization may have been the beginning of the infiltration of this other type of Homo sapien that we're calling white people, and that platform had already been installed in the language of the brain computer, so that all the ways that these people think, all of the ways that this other type of Homo sapiens speak, are elevated over the ways that we speak. Or when I say we, you alluded to it last week, was people along the equator, because as I began hearing you talk about, and I had never made that connection, Kofi. You were the first person who, like I said last program, you really truly are a polymath, and you're able to put disparate ideas together and synthesize them into something very practical and useful and creative. And I had not thought about it. I know that you and I had talked about the indigenous nature of black people in the Americas. And we kind of went at some length, and we finally had a meeting of the minds there. But then you helped me see it further, which is that the pyramidal structures that we see here in the Americas, of course, are we'll say, of course, they are connected to the pyramidal structures in Africa. I don't know
all
if
along
you and
the
I
equator. They're all over the place along the equator.
Right, all along the equator. So it's really about people in the equator. And so the question that I have in regard to what you just said about what happened to the Indus Valley and what happened to the Harappan civilization in what we think of as India is that probably not what happened in what we think of as East Asia or China, today, because there along the equator are the ancient societies in Southeast Asia, and that would be closer to the equator, are called the Khmer? Is that what that is called?
Well, yeah, that's one of the groups. Yeah, exactly. In Cambodia and all them, yeah, and they have more groups in all of those countries. The Khmer is just one of them. You have them in Philippines and all over the place. Dark skin, coiled hair, pyramid
flat
building
nose.
People. Yeah, flat
pyramid
nose.
Building.
Yeah, pyramid building people. I think it hasn't been done yet, but I think if people were to look at the languages and compare them, I think that all along the equator, from Azteca to the Philippines, you'll find great similarities. If you check the stories, if you check the pantheon of gods, you'll always find great similarities. That's why you have so many similar stories to Jesus. I've seen a lot of memes on the internet that shows how there's always been a Messiah born of a virgin on a certain type of day that is the Son of God, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All along, you find it in Egypt with Heru. You find it all. You find it everywhere along the equator. And if we had people doing more research into that, I'm so sure that they'd be linked up. And I got a lot of this information when I was in college, going to Dr. Leonard Jeffries' classes. He put me onto the idea. The way he formulated was sun people versus ice people. Equatorial versus northern people. And and when I look at it that way, I always find that it's people coming from the north, barbaric, oppressive, racist people coming from the north. Whatever level of racism their system is in at the time, it's always the same. You're different, but you're different in darker. So I need to either destroy you or enslave you and slowly destroy you over the years. And it's funny that you brought up Southeast Asia, because the same exact thing happened in China along the Yellow and Yangtze River Valley in southern China. They even have certain folk tales that talk about the small black people that they had to destroy, and they have festivals every year in China where they where they kind of say sorry for what they did, so that they won't get some kind of curse. But yeah, and today they call people in Southeast Asia negritos. I assume that came from the Spanish people that would take the people from Spain that came and took over in the 1600s. And yeah, you find that same story told over and over again.
So I'd seen some might have been Live Science, but it was a what white folks call a bona fide science journal, that they had found red-headed people, and I think they had analyzed the DNA and also could determine what melanocyte structure they had in their skin. They were very light-skinned people with red hair, that they had found them in some of the tombs in China. So it sounds like it's the same story that played out in India, happened all over Asia, probably all over the world. And so to get back to this idea of, because, the question is it your sense that this similarity in the way people orient themselves to the world along the equator, meaning even leading up to building pyramids and spending a lot of time preparing for what we think happens outside of this frame of experience that we call life here, that all of those similarities in the way that people oriented themselves to the world along the equator, is it your sense that, because I heard you talk about Leonard Jeffries talking about the sun people and the ice people, that these are just natural outgrowths of being a Homo sapien and living in conditions that were more hospitable to life? Or is it your sense that somehow there were a group of people who knew the importance of staying close to the equator for some reason, whether it was electromagnetic or having to do with the alignment of stars, etc., making sure that, that the energy fields, whatever they are, we're calling them electromagnetic for right now, but they're probably or discerned to be much more complex than that at that time. Is it your sense that these people deliberately stayed close to the equator and then just handed off what they knew, their knowledge base, from one generation to the next, all over where they went around the world, which happened to be close to the equator? So if I can just, if I can meet my question to make sure that you understand what I'm asking, is it your sense that these things would have happened independently of whether or not these people were in contact with each other, just by virtue of the fact that this is the way people develop when they are in physical conditions that are more hospitable to life? Or is it your sense that this was deliberately handed off?
Mhm. I think that I think that people left. That okay, so people people existed all along the equator and all over Earth, and I think that those people that didn't stay along the equator are the ones that mixed with the other types of people, the other types of hominids on the Earth, because you know, black people didn't just stay along the equator. We did move to the northern parts of the world. You know, we did move to Russia and to England and Scotland, and we did live up there with whatever types of people were there. But I think those dark skinned black people who did move there, they lost touch with the rest of us. And what happened was, you know, they weren't able to have that same electromagnetic connection to society that we had. And since we were in such a nice climate, since we weren't in competition with nature, we were able to develop ourselves. We were able to, you know, live happily and not go to war because we didn't have to. Whereas the people in the other areas, the white people who lived in the mountains of Afghanistan and Central Asia, the ones who lived in Mongolia, the ones who lived in Europe, those people, because of what they grew up in, because of what they developed in, all they knew was war. All their words, you know, all of their grammatical sentence structure, all of their words lead them to war. So when they met us, the opposite of them, all they saw was opportunity to take over. Now, in being more specific to your question, whether we were connected and that's why we were doing what we were doing, or whether it was just a natural outgrowth of being where we were, I think that we were more physically connected. Okay, mm-hmm. I think that we had people going from. I think we had people going from one place to the other, sharing notes, sharing discoveries, sharing inventions, and because we were all family and we were all connected. So if we, you know, it wasn't like today where if you invent something, you want to keep it to yourself until you could patent it and make money off of it. It wasn't that kind of system. It was, you know, mm-hmm. it was a system of sharing. When you live in tropical paradise, you don't have any reason to hoard the fruits and the animals and distribute it to people if they can give you money, or if they can give you. You don't have any reason for that because there's so much, and there's so much better things to do than hoarding resources. That, you know, I suspect that's what we were doing, and I also suspect that we thought that we could also share that information with the barbarians, but you know, we were mistaken. You know, I think that maybe we thought that you know, since we were so powerful and smart and beautiful that we can go anywhere and bring people onto our level, which is, I think, what we still do today, even in America. Years and years and years of being destroyed, we still, you know, go out of our way to hold white people's hands and be with them, even, you know, and we don't learn. And I think we've been failing to learn this lesson for at least the last 4,000 years. You know. Yeah,
I don't think that we understand. Using what you were saying last week, I don't think that we understand that their neurology is hardwired for conflict and scarcity, mm-hmm. and we keep trying to introduce an application, an app that says, "Hey, try this app. This will transcend your scarcity mentality," not understanding that the very platform of their brains will not allow them to run that app.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Definitely.
And so, I mean, this is just building on the conversation that we had last time, and that their language is an outgrowth of their neural structure, of their brain structure. It's organic, you know, and this is that language isn't just about, and we didn't get into a lot of detail with this last time, and we might have to do a part 3, Kofi, if your wife will allow. And that languages are, and the sounds are not random. I have all the respect in the world for Mr. Fuller, of course. One of the things he says that I'm understanding is not correct now is that sounds are not just some random thing that you then yourself, out of your own independent will, apply meaning to. That the sounds themselves have an effect on matter and any other thing that we consider, phenomenon in our universe. And so the sounds themselves are not independent. They come with a meaning, because since they do things to matter, they do things to your brain, because your brain is made out of these substances and electrons and so on. And so in that sense that they have a sort of meaning because they do certain things to you. In that way, there are languages that have more resonance with one particular structure than another. And so one group of people's language or sounds runs their platform, their neuronal structure. And so you've got white folks who have a language, and it runs what it runs on them. And they've imposed that on us. So I get this sense that that I'm going to stop talking and let you finish what you were saying.
Okay, so going on what you were saying about the language and the platform and the fact that they impose it on us, that would suggest that if we imposed a language onto them, that it might be able to, that platform and that app might be able to work on their brain. And I don't think that's the truth, because like you said, their structure is wired so different than ours, and ours is wired so different than theirs. And even though we've been speaking English for however many amount of years, and speaking Arabic on the other side of the world for so many years, we're still Sun people. We're still trying to share. We're still trying to be friends. And what that suggests is that we're just completely different, and we need to figure out a way to do our own thing without them, if that's even possible, with them still being on the earth. Yeah. Now, talking about going back to the Dark Ages over there, so that and then today we have India with the
or the ignorant ages. The ignorant. It's kind of difficult, but I'm going to try to say the ignorant ages rather than the Dark Ages. Yeah. Yeah,
and that works too. The ignorant ages, or the foolish ages, or the lack of illumination. probably doesn't work either.
Right,
but yeah,
right. Their language is really, yeah.
Yeah, it makes communication extremely difficult. And that works, because as long as we're trying to not think like our oppressors, we're going to be struggling and stumbling, where they can just say whatever they want, and they mean what they say. When they say Dark Ages, they mean, yes, dark is bad, and therefore an age that is called dark is bad. So let's try to have a light age, But afterwards, if you look at India today, you'll find that just like over here, the darker they are, the more melanin they have in their skin, the less power they have in that society, the more danger their life is constantly in. Probably the lower, and I've heard you talk about this, the lower their life expectancy is. I don't even have to look at the CIA fact book or wherever. I know that the darker they are in India, the higher the chances for dying early, the higher the chances for getting raped. And rape has been talked about India a lot in recent times. And a lot of times it's the lighter skinned people who are at the center of these rape, lighter skinned women who are getting raped. But I'm sure that it's happening to the darker people, and people aren't even talking about it. Right. Right. And now, if we look at Europe, the Romans were trying to do what the white folks is doing today, which is to control all the earth and be able to dominate. They were trying to do that. They were trying to do globalization, where everybody was part of the Roman Empire and had to trade with them and had to be a part of their army. They were trying it. The Greeks were trying it too. Yes, that's also another thing that I've noticed historically that white folks have been doing. They've been trying to get the earth under their control, even if they don't even know how big the earth is. They've been doing it. The Greeks did it. The Romans did it. the French and the rest of the Europeans was doing it. It's like a compulsory drive that they need to control the earth. I don't know why, but they're just doing that. But when the Romans fell, there was another age of dumbness, of foolishness. There were no books being read, no books being written. There weren't people. People were rarely inventing or trying to invent. They weren't even doing their favorite thing, which is taking over other lands. They were just in complete disarray. And when that happened, it didn't look good for us over there, because historically we were in Europe from time immemorial. We were there for a long time. We were there in ancient Egyptian times. We were there in we were there in the Roman times. We were always there. You'll find our statues. You'll find books about us. You'll find ancient historians talking about Black people here and there. Even during the age of exploration, when the Europeans were traveling in their ships all around the world, you'll still find Black people on the ships with them. But after that age, we were swept away. I don't know if we were killed off. I don't know if we were just shipped off. But after that dark age ended, you start to find things like the first African to be in England. I wrote an article a few months ago about this Nigerian who they call as the first Black person to be a victim of a hate crime in Nigeria. He was in England. He was a man from Nigeria that got on a ship, that stowaway on a ship and went to England and married an English woman, and he had trouble in his life, and eventually they killed him. Police killed him, and that was it. And he was supposed to be the first. But how can that be? How can he be the first of anything when Black folks was going there since since the Europeans were there? We've always been going there. But that dark age served to erase the slate and allow them to start all over, and allow them to say, everything's new again. Black folks wasn't here. We discovered them in their foolishness in Africa, and we brought them the light of civilization. When in fact we were already there in Europe. We were already in Africa, civilized. If that's the word you want to use. Right. That dim age. Another bad word for that. Dim, dark. Yeah. That foolish age, the age of foolishness, allowed them to do that. And now you have the first Black person doing this, that, and the third. When you had Black people that was emperors of ancient Rome, and and it's documented. It's not even like some conspiracy kind of. Some people say it's documented in Roman texts that there was more than one Black person that was ruling that society.
Well, even with it's interesting to me. Trying to figure out all of this. There's this conspiracy, which is an Orwellian thing that they've been doing, that we're uncovering, right? That they've been doing for thousands of years, which is this blotting out, this shutting everything down. It would be like over here, if I'm getting it correctly, it would be like right now we can power up our computers and go online and see what we normally see, or people who have computers in their houses, they turn them on, you see what you see what you're going to see. And this is really, I think, what you're alluding to, everything turns off. All of a sudden everything is turned off and could be done purposely. We're going to turn everything off, and we're going in and it's like cooking the books. It's like when somebody is about to get investigated for a financial crime. People go in and they start shredding. They head to the shredder. They start blotting things out. They start making up false books to account for why the money is where it is. So people can, if you shut everything down, you reprogram everything. I'm not sure exactly why what they would do, but you shut everything down, and so you reset everything. So you say there's no longer a Black president, never was one. I don't know what you're talking about. There was never any, I don't know, who's Martin Luther King? Oh, you're talking about Martin Luther? Or you mean Martin Luther that did the Protestant Reformation? We have those records. This Martin Luther King, I think you're getting that confused with the idea that there were kings in Europe and that Martin Luther was highly revered, and so you're calling him Martin Luther King. But no, Martin Luther King, a black man, that's a wives' tale. I don't know what you're talking about. You're talking about Martin Luther, the Protestant Reformation, and the kings. You know, you can just go in and you can mix and match everything that you want to so that it lines up to the story that you want to tell and just reset.
Or you can say, actually, yeah, Martin Luther King, but this is what he looked like because we have control of all the images and all the data. So here's a picture of Martin Luther King. Is this who you're talking about? Yeah, of course that's who you're talking about because that's who it was. And so, what do you think, CREE? Being that we're Sun people, Black people around, and that we associate with the sun, we build our structures that to go to the sun. Our hair grows towards the sun. We just love it, and the sun don't hurt us like it hurts Caucasians, like it hurts the Neanderthals. Right. What do you think of an ecliptic age, an age of the eclipse, where the sun is being blocked, and the sun is being blocked by, even by the moon, which is white, an ecliptic age where we are in fact being eclipsed by another group of people. How does that work linguistically in your mind?
Wow. Well, it doesn't. It blows my mind so much that I'm blowing circuits. I can't. What kind of language would you use for that? And then I wonder what other creatures and plants would survive that. What would happen to the physiology of everything on this planet, and of course ours, because we're connected to them, if the sun was diminished, the UV rays were diminished by 80%? I can't even imagine that. I mean, in reference to the Dark Age, in not calling it the Dark Age, but in fact calling it an ecliptic age. Oh, I like that. Can we call it that? And I got ready to say that's brilliant, you see. I'm programmed.
Right.
That is, I've just taken it on. That's what we will call it that. That is genius. The ecliptic age. Oh my goodness, that's fabulous. Okay, let's go forward. That's fabulous. That's my new word for it. Okay, the ecliptic age.
Yeah, that works. So yeah, they're able to reset. They were able to reset and eclipse us in every manner. You look at Russia; they have the father of Russian literature, Alexander Pushkin. He was an Ethiopian, and when you look at he developed the Russian alphabet, that the Cyrillic alphabet that they use today. He wrote so many books. But when you look at him today, if you look him up, he looks European. You have to actually go into it to figure out that he's not in fact a Russian. He's actually an Ethiopian. And so that is basically what we're dealing with here. We're starting to come out of our morose. We're starting to come out of our slowed down vibrations. We're starting to we might be starting to wake up from the last ecliptic age, which I think for us in North America, the last ecliptic age was enslavement, and they were able to change our language. They were able to change our gods. They were able to just change everything about us, change our names. So today we're not what we were. We're not socially what we were before the age of enslavement. We've been eclipsed in North America. We don't really remember what was happening before. Everybody says that something else was happening, but none of us really agree on what it was. So we've been successfully eclipsed over here. Okay, but even in our ecliptic state, we're still developing ourselves. We're still developing our languages, developing what we do from time to time, and I suspect that this age, this coming dark age, which is going to be from our technology being unable to access our data, it's going to cause us possibly go into another dark age, and any number of things can happen. Ecliptic age. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any number of things can happen. Looking at history, we can go. We're already at the bottom of society right now in America, but we can go. It could be worse, because what's happening to us over here is not as bad, in my estimation, as what's happening to the black people in India. At least we can pretend to be comfortable and get a job somewhere. Some of us can pretend to be comfortable and get a job somewhere and just live. But over there, it's really bad, and it's been like that for a long time, and it can go like that for us if we're not careful about how we deal with our data.
Let me pick up on that in a couple of ways. Two ideas I want to deal with this, which is, if you're in a chattel slavery type situation, how does that compare to the situation that, say, we're in here in this part of the world, in the United States? And then, in terms of longevity and health and so on. And then the other thing that I want to ask about is whether or not we might not be in a better situation if there was a digital dark age, a digital ecliptic age. Okay. And I will start with that one. And that is that I have fantasies like a lot of black people. I have fantasies that the computers that hold all my debt will just completely crash, and that I know that when there are great big natural disasters like hurricanes and earthquakes and stuff, for most black people, and I will say that I will speak for myself, that I've heard this from a number of black people, that's a holiday for us. I mean, things are so horrible for us that when things crash and white folks are focused on something else besides beating up on us and can't keep track of, how they are having a party beating up on us, things are a lot easier for me. I mean, and, hey, I'd rather spend a day not going to work and finding food somewhere.
Right.
Things of that. So I'm saying when things crash and people are just focused on, white folks are just focused on surviving, we're already focused on surviving. That may even give us a head start.
I agree. I agree partially, but partially I also suspect that it might not be all roses, because along with us having the leg up with the survival, we'd be able to survive better because we've been doing it for so long. We have to also take into consideration the rest of the world is not going to be looking anymore. The reason why the reason why things like the civil rights have to happen, and the civil rights movement and the decolonization of Africa and all of those things, it could be argued whether that was beneficial or not. It was a change, and it had to happen because of this technology. White folks no longer can just run up to us and say, "Nigger, I'm going to lynch you because you're a nigger." You can't do that anymore. They have to kind of do it a lot more carefully now, because the rest of their enemies, Russia and China, their enemies will jump on any, and they've been doing that. They'll jump on any reason to criticize them because they can see what's happening.
I'm not sure I agree with that, Kofi. I'm not sure I agree with that. So let me push back a little bit.
Okay.
I think that white folks all over the world, including Russia, and most generally non-black people all over the world, are A-OK today and have always been killing us whenever any of the rest of them get ready. I think they play games with each other, but I think the evidence of it is that it really hasn't slowed down. It hasn't slowed down. I don't think it's slowed down.
Hasn't slowed down. Let's see. Okay, I could agree with that. Yeah. So, yeah, it's just different. But I think every time that they're forced to change a little bit, that's where we're given opportunities. When they were forced to change the way that they were colonizing Africa, we got opportunities to put people in power for whatever short bit of time. We were able to put people in power and divert the resources of that land or of that area. Even for that short little bit of time, we were able to divert the resources to something more constructive as far as we were concerned. So now, if if Africa, the continent, was still under colonial domination the way it was 60 years ago, we wouldn't be able to look to heroes to kind of give us inspiration to kind of go forward more. We'd still be where we were. Even the civil rights. I think you've talked about the civil rights time when white folks had to give a couple of black people jobs here and there because we were burning down their cities. So they had to shift. They had to shift their system a little bit, and I think that those times give us opportunities to better ourselves a little bit. And I think it's those shifts is where we're gonna find the most the most benefit. Okay, but yeah, I can definitely agree that they all kill black people the same. But I think that a lot of the different types of white people and different non-black people don't love each other, and
right.
they want to take any opportunity they can to weaken the other white person so they can take their spot. And that's kind of that's kind of the thing I was going with when I was saying that they'll see, oh, America, you talk about human rights, this, that, and the third, but look what you're doing over there. And so what that will cause the Americans to do over here is shift what they're doing. And I think that in the oncoming ecliptic age, that without the connection to each other, because we're overpopulated by them, because they have such a high population over here, it's going to be really difficult for us to etch out a living in every state they outnumber us by tens of percent at least. Now, unless we're living somewhere like I'm thinking. Maybe the part of America that's known as the Black Belt, which is a line of majority populated black counties from Alabama to South Carolina. That might, we might be able to situate something down there if we're organized enough. But outside of that area, it's going to be hell for us all over this continent. When white folks are allowed to do what they want to do without anybody saying anything to them,
Well, you're talking about if we no longer have. We're talking about a digital ecliptic age, so you don't have speed of light transmission, and maybe you don't even have telephone lines. You don't have that. I'm trying to figure out where that takes us. Does that put us in a place that is essentially different than before it was invented? Does that take us back to 1800, or does it take us somewhere or does it take us somewhere else? Because I think that it doesn't take us back to 1800. I think it takes us in an entirely different place because at least in 1800 you knew that you didn't have digital technology, but you had other systems to keep track of what you were doing. Now all of a sudden you see what I'm saying? So you did have slave rolls. Now you won't have anything. How do you keep track of it? How do they keep track of anything? I think that we can make a lot of more progress because they're going to be completely in disarray because they don't have any evidence of what they're doing. All they're going to have is that individual white folks have their individual expertise. And somehow they've got to get to one another and say, now you know how to smelt steel, right? Now how was it that you made that kind of shit? Was there somebody in that part? And then they've got to figure out how to get from point A to point B on a continent or what have you to go see if they can find those persons, enough of them, that can help them put together the, you know what I mean? It's like, okay, he knows that. Go ahead.
But do you think that we'll be in any position to compete with them? Sure, they'll say, you know how to smell steel, you know how to build ships, but what will we be doing at that time?
Well, see, that's why I think that that's why I'm not really like that upset about the coming ecliptic age, because yes, this is really what I think, and of course, now I didn't think about this before this conversation. I've said before that I think well in conversation. If we are all at a place where we don't have digital records of what we know how to do, okay? But we have individual people who know things, And somehow we've got to coalesce what individuals of us know how to do and make that into a cohesive package into doing constructive things. If everybody's like that, if black people are in that situation and white folks are in that situation, even though black people have not been allowed to learn the amounts of things that white folks have been allowed to learn, even though we know probably three for every 10 things that white folks know, I believe that I think we're naturally more innovative. I think we naturally have more energy. I think to give us a 3 to 10 ratio and just let us go, we'll surpass them. I really believe that. I do.
Even with the population difference in America and the fact that they're going to be organized to kill us and we might not be organized to kill them. See, because they can divert 20% of their population to just go and mess with them black people in the South. And the other 80% of us will be trying to get things back together. Just keep that y'all keep them down, and we'll, y'all the more foolish redneck white trash white people, y'all go and do that over there, and we're gonna be over here trying to reconnect with our brothers up north and out east in Europe. Even with our innovative skills, do you think that we'd be able to deal with that? I mean, maybe we could, but do you think that we'd be able to deal and develop, even keeping in mind that we still have these Neanderthals that are going to be coming down trying to take what we've done and just do what they've done historically?
No, you know what? I wasn't really I was not, and I've forgotten that that's what you were. That was one of the main points that you were making. No, I wasn't trying to make an argument that let's stay here in the Americas. That's the best place. No, I wasn't trying. I was really just looking at the world as a whole. I was not. I was not trying.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So overall, no, definitely. I was considering that the ecliptic age happening only in America, happening globally. Yeah. No, I think.
Wait a minute. I don't think that you can have an ecliptic age that would just happen one place. I think as long as you still had structure. As long as you still had infrastructure in one part of the world, I think that it would very quickly rebuild itself in another part of the world. So I think if you're talking about an ecliptic age, it has to be planet-wide.
In that situation, I agree 100%. I think that in that situation, yes, our 3-to-1 ratio will allow us to eclipse them. In fact, and I also think that their warlike. I think that their warlike Neanderthalic nature will force them to stay in their ecliptic age because if you look at all of those ages that happened in Europe, it took black folks coming up there and bringing them out of it. The first one, the first one that I know of is when the people in ancient Egypt went up to Greece and taught them how to speak, how to make fire, and so on and so on and so on. And then we were thanked with Alexander coming down and trying to destroy us and Hellenize us, and happening again with the Moors, and then we were thanked with the Arabs and Europeans coming down and enslaved. So I think that I hear you, and I think that overall a global ecliptic age would be beneficial to us because we're not gonna be blood. I don't think we're gonna be bloodthirsty to take over each other like how the Europeans are going to be with each other. It might be pockets where we might not do so well, but overall, I think, I hear what you're saying, and I think that it would be more beneficial than not.
Excellent. Let me do a program ID. This is the Counter-Racist Evolving Engineer program, the CREE program, for Thursday, April 2nd, 2015. This evening, we're having a Part 2 conversation with Kofi, who is the founder of World Afropedia, and as I said last program that he was on 2 weeks ago, I hold him to be a polymath, a person of wide-ranging information and abilities. And so we're discussing a number of things. We're kind of doing a seminar on topics that we discussed 2 weeks previous, and right now we're discussing the advantages and disadvantages and the contrast and comparison of what's been called the digital dark age, but we've renamed it the digital ecliptic age. What would the ecliptic age mean for black people globally? And then we kind of discussed what was happening in North America. So Yeah, so that's kind of where that is now. Where we are now, though, we didn't. I'll just ask. You have the outline in front of you. Which topic would you like to move into next? It seems to me that the next thing to talk about might be. I don't know. Which one would you like to talk about next?
Well, how we can prepare for it. It's going to happen. So what we need to do is prepare. We need to be doing things now so that people, in that age can be a little bit more ready. And white folks are doing it. In my time of building World Afropedia from 2010, 2011 until today, I've gone to a lot of different digital encyclopedic communities, and you have white people in all ranges of thought making their own encyclopedias, and they get all of their friends who also agree with them, and they all contribute to it. There was one that I was on a few years ago called Post-Collapse. It was a post-collapse digital encyclepedia. And
I had no idea. Are you serious?
Yeah, it's gone now. It's gone. I downloaded it, so I have it somewhere in my archives. But what was in that site was how to raise chickens, how to build houses, how to build solar panel grids, etc. Because the white people at Reddit, a social community of people who share notes and share news and all of that, they partition off of part of their community to the post-collapse, and then that little it's called a subreddit. In the website reddit.com, there's a whole bunch of subreddits of different communities of people who have different interests, and one of those communities was called post-collapse. Now, those people in the post-collapse community, they built an encyclopedia like World Afropedia, similar software, but not the same kind of software, because there's like hundreds of different encyclopedia software out there. They used another one, and they had hundreds of articles devoted to what we need to do when the society that we're in now collapses. They were sharing all kind of information, and the site is gone now. So whoever was in control of it took it down and deleted it off the internet and just kept it. Maybe they made it secret because you're able to make those secrets where if you don't have access to you won't know it exists. Initially, I wanted to make World Afropedia.
That's what. That's what I think. I think that's what it is, and because they don't want certain people to have access to it. The other part is I wonder, is there something in there, one of them, because they wouldn't be able to make that public. Now, this is how we deal with Black people. This is,
I am so sure that exists. In fact, I know that the CIA has one, an internal one, using the same software that I use. It was in one of those recent whistleblowing leaks that they have an internal one where they write about people who they don't like or who they do like or who they need to know about. They write about them and have them in that. It's an internal wiki where they do that in. And this probably goes even deeper than that. How can we, practice racism in the future? Or whatever words that they'll be using to, I'm sure of it. I've seen so many out there. If that didn't exist, I'd be surprised.
Absolutely. There's a very important question that is a very important question to all of this, in terms of, because we're talking about how we're going to survive, getting ready for it, preparing for this thing coming. Of course, that's not separate, obviously, from what you're talking about, from how they're preparing, right? And sort of central to that question and running through everything we've talked about since we started discussing this is we have these two different types of hominids, two different types of Homo sapiens, two basic types. And everybody else on the planet is a confluence, a DNA, genetic, and you could say cultural if you want, or behavioral, but that really stems from genetics, really. Confluence of these two different types of Homo sapiens, two very different types. Now, we're enough alike to where we can both say we're Homo sapiens, but we have, and you alluded to it earlier, it's like Star Wars. You have what is it called? The two Siths, right? And they're opposite.
You have the Force, the dark side and the light side.
Right. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, which consists of these microscopic, I don't remember the name of them, these microscopic things in your body. The more you have them, the closer you are to the dark age, and the less you have them, the closer you are to the good age, to the dark side versus the light side. It's one or the other, but the amount you have determines which side of the force you're on.
Right, and so that's really that's an important idea, because it really gets to there's always this question of how do you deal with these people who are the in-betweens. There are a lot of people in the counter-racial science genre who call these people buffers, but I think that's a really imprecise and not really, it's too imprecise to give us any traction as to what we should do with them. I think if you see, and this is why I was using the word Sith, as I understand it, there are two characters in the Star Wars genre of science fiction. They're two different Siths, and they're opposites, and basically they're just adepts. They're experts in utilizing the Force, but they have they have polar opposite energies. So so you have that, and then you have, as you kind of alluded to, you have this confluence of these particles, and they congeal in these different types of people. So as the mating has occurred over time, you have some people all over the world, whether they're in Central Asia, whether you're talking about in Arabia, or whether you're talking about in India, or even if you're talking about over here in the Americas, where there's been that mixing. You don't really know what type of energy you're dealing with. You basically know by looking at phenotype. There's probably a good correlation for the undeniably black people, and a great correlation with the undeniably white people in terms of their energy. It's not 100%, but it's a good correlation. But when you're looking at these in-betweens, you don't necessarily know. It's all about, what is their neuronal mechanism? Is it more hooked up towards that white way of thinking, which is not just about war, not just about conflict, but there's a whole way that they relate to the world that is just different than ours. It's less intuitive. In other words, it connects to that other source in a different kind of way. It's more materialistic, and probably some other things that I can't name. But I guess I alluded to a central question, and that central question is here's the central question that's running through all of it. You've got these two opposite things. We talked about why black people with our genophilia, why we just keep giving them second chances. But then the central question running through all of this in terms of what white folks who are preparing for this coming collapse, this digital eclipse, the central question is all along history, and even after that, why have they allowed us to continue to exist? What do they want to do with us? Because knowing what they want to do with us, if we know that in fact they don't want us to disappear because they need something from us, if we know what that thing is, that's going to inform, what it is that they cannot live without. So that even when they're warring with us, we know that there's this one thing that they can't take out. Then we can strategize around that, because that's the one thing they can't live without. Because there is that question. Because, even right now, I believe that they have the capacity, if they wanted to, really, they could kill every last black person on this planet. At this point in time, they could.
Yeah, I think so, too.
They have it. And of course, they know that. Now, and we know they don't like us, per se. So what is it? What do they want from us? What do they want to do with us? And what will they want to do with us after this digital eclipse?
But I've thought about that, and I've talked to people about it a lot of times, and wouldn't the understanding that I've come to is that it's simply that if we're not here, then they're going to kill each other. We are the buffer, because if we didn't exist, they wouldn't have anything to compete against. They would, in fact, they would probably just take whoever is in their society who looks remotely like us, and those people will become the black people, and it will keep on happening until there's no more people on Earth. The dark-haired white people, then the red, then the dark-eyed white people, then the quote-unquote swarthy white people, and little by little they'll just keep on cannibalizing themselves. And I think that the ones in the white people in power know this. The real ones in power, they know that they can't, they have whatever neuronal problems in their head that makes them go to war will eventually make them attack each other. And so,
they've got some sort of obsessive neuronal mechanism that makes them go after all things dark.
All things, yep. And then, or similarly, maybe it's something like how some people have inborn aversion to cockroaches. They can't hurt you, They can't do anything to you really. But when you see it, you want to destroy it. And maybe they have that aversion to us, But they know that once we're not here, that they're gonna target the next in line, and so on. When I was going to City College, I was close friends with this guy from Bangladesh, and he took a lot of the Black Studies classes with me, and I would ask him. I'd say, Muhammad, his name's Muhammad. I'd say, Muhammad, why do you come to these Black Studies classes? Why do you talk to me about this, these Black history and so on? He was doing pre-med. Your parents have you living nice. You doing your pre-med. You're going to be a doctor. What use do you have to be talking to me like this? And he said, Kofi, here's the thing. I appreciate y'all Black people, because if y'all weren't here, then we'd probably be the ones getting the brunt of this white anger. And not in so many words, but he basically said that if we weren't here, then his people, his dark-skinned Bangladesh people, would be the next in line, or people like him would be the next in line. And so what happens is, basically, we got to figure it out. We got to figure out how to end this system before y'all are, taken out or whatever. We're gonna be the next Black people, And it got me thinking that that might be the strategy that we need to consider and take into and start to express to the other darker peoples on the earth. If y'all don't get this under control soon, we're not going to be here, and y'all are going to be the next ones. And I don't think y'all want to go through what we're going through. But based on what you just said, and just so the listeners know, we explained it at the top of the program. We've got some sort of delay, so it looks like we're interrupting one another. We're too enthusiastic, but that's what's going on. But maybe based on what you just said, Kofi, I don't see that working, because the lightest people, even within the lightest people, there is a variation. There are brunettes and blondes. And certainly the blondes know that they can't be on the planet, blondes and blue eyes, they know they can't be on the planet all by themselves. I think even the very lightest people don't want to see the most undeniably Black people go, because once that happens, it's a domino effect, and then they'll all be gone. So it's like, I don't think that we can say, well, they want to get rid of all the coiled-haired, dark-skinned people on the planet, so you guys better get you don't want that to happen because you'll be next. I just don't see that being. I don't know that that's going to be persuasive, because even given that argument, even these undeniably white folks in Germany, they don't want to see us go either. But I think that there's some argument. I mean, I definitely see merit to what you're saying, and I do think that it's something in their DNA. Their energy just doesn't mix with us. They just, for some reason, they can't deal with us in some way. I don't know why that is. I don't know what the evolutionary mechanism is for them to do that. I'm not sure what it is. I think it probably has something to do with, and we could probably move on to the next subject now. I don't know. But I think, and I haven't quite figured it out, I'm going to just put it out there. I'm writing about this. It has some relationship, I think, to bacteria. I think what's operating white folks is some sort of microorganism that has blended with their DNA. And I actually think, because we're talking about two different types of people who are on this planet, two different types, very distinctly different Homo sapiens, and we're just so different. And so therefore, what we were here first, obviously. So what made the second type? Because even white folks today know that it isn't the environment, it isn't physical environment, it isn't just that they went to latitudes that had less sunlight and therefore they adapted to that, and that's why their skin got light. That's been the theory for a long time, but that's been discredited now because they've been able to find remains of Homo sapiens, fully modern Homo sapiens, at very high latitudes
with very low sunlight, with very dark skin. So we know that's not the case. That's not it. So it's not something, they didn't adapt to environmental conditions. So what is it? I think that the best mechanism that has been discovered so far was discovered by a woman by the name of Lynn Margulis, and she will basically prove that basically bacteria is that symbiogenesis. In other words, the mixing of DNA material from different species is what is the major pusher of evolution. You have adaptation to environment and stuff like that, and sexual selection does minor changes to the species, but the big leaps in evolution come from the merging of DNA material from different species, and that microorganisms are the main push to do that because they're the easiest one to do that. And so if you eat certain foods, or even if that microorganism is in the genitalia, which is probably why the practice of circumcision became so popular in many parts of the world, because different types of microorganisms can be embedded underneath foreskin. And if you introduce a certain type of bacteria, yeast, what have you, that can introduce albinism. But and there's certain cilia that which we would, in a larger manifestation of it, would be called hair. That DNA gets mixed with other kind of DNA, and then you get this whole different type of person. Now, that kind of symbiogenesis, that DNA material that's coming from this microorganism is about. It basically they invade and they colonize cells. And if that type of motivation, if that's where that's coming from, it's this microorganisms that's in white folks, that could be, you've got two different species that are warring with one another. You got these microorganisms that don't want to get totally taken over by this large organism, which is a person, which is the strongest one would be those of us who've been here the longest, black folks. So and then you've got this other source that's more hospitable to it, these microorganisms, and you just got this warring. It's me or you. It's the microorganism. It's eat or be eaten. So you got this bacteria that's like, I put myself onto this other bigger host, but I don't want to get eaten by this other host, this black person. I haven't written.
How would the bacteria? How would the bacteria know that there are other people? You know what I mean? Like if it's a small bacteria that exists. Are we? Am I to understand that it is having symbiosis with the white person, and then it sees the world through that white person's eyes?
With the black person, yeah. Yes, absolutely. Well, the DNA gets merged. But the DNA gets merged, and
then they become one. They just become that thing.
Yeah,
okay.
They become a merging of that. Yeah, absolutely. And then, there's a thing called swarm intelligence, where so you might have that one cell or that one microorganism that's not that smart, but if you look at bees and ants, they have a swarm intelligence that's incredible. So you got a swarm intelligence inside of these microorganisms inside of white folks that are fighting with our micro structure.
Right, and our swarm intelligence is in complete disarray all over the planet. And I think that this technology that we're talking about here, this data management technology, this wikis and all of this can be used to improve our swarm intelligence. That's kind of been my drive, that the data that we have on World Afropedia, it's small, but if it can
not, but go ahead.
Okay, so comparatively to Wikipedia or to other wikis, it's small compared to where it should be. There's so much information out there that we need to have written down and ingested into our brain, that if we could take this technology and somehow start to use it together to go against all of our programming, somehow go against all of that and start to sit down and say, okay, we need to work something out where we're all thinking kind of similarly, and it would help to improve our swarm intelligence. Now going back to what we were talking about how us black folks in America, we've been here for some time. some of us say we have it, some of us say we have, some of us say we're this, that, and third, but we don't agree. I imagine that if a small percentage of people from each from each if a small percentage from each thought process, Moors, Hebrew Israelites, all of us, all of our thinkers could get on there and start to put our data there. Oh, I think that we're doing this, and my research leads me here, and all of us were also on there agreeing or disagreeing. That would allow us to evolve from where we are now, being a whole bunch of disorganized groups into one organized group. And that was my driving force for making that site in the first place. That we have our thinkers, and we all work to compare our data, debate our data, compare our notes.
Right.
In the back rooms of World Afropedia, similar to how the white folks do in their back rooms of Wikipedia, we'd be able to, do away with all of the misinformation that was programmed into our computer. Because a lot of these movements and a lot of these thoughts that we have today, I have a suspicion that a significant percentage of them, I don't know what percentage, but a significant percentage of them were put into us by white people. For instance, they might have taken a black person, abused him, whatever, all throughout his life, but given him information and then let him loose on the people. There was a movie called The Manchurian Candidate, where the U.S. government took the protagonist, Denzel Washington, whatever his name was in the movie, and they gave him information and they let him loose and they set him off when they wanted to do whatever they wanted. I think that has happened in our different movements. So today we have people spreading information that is not constructive at all, that won't help us in any way imaginable. People focusing on topics that is not important, or that is not important right now. That maybe it's important later on, but right now we have certain problems that we need to deal with, and these thinkers, historical and present, aren't focusing on them. And if we had enough people in one, enough different thinkers in one place comparing notes, that they would be able to, that we would eventually be able to differentiate. Now, me, I personally am of one thought process, one historical process, and what I do is I record what I know, what I've learned, and I write articles. I've written thousands on World Afropedia, and other people have come and gone throughout the years and brought their information, and they brought their information, and they've been able to compare, and I've been able to compare what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. So personally, what I dreamed to happen with World Afropedia has started to happen in my own mind. I have these people here and there throughout the years coming and writing down what they think to be the case, and I'm able to, and being that I've been on that site since the beginning, I'm able to remember, okay, this was written then, and I can compare it to kind of get me to a point of understanding that I wouldn't have been without that data.
So no, I mean, I think that what you're saying, because right now we just have the I won't even mention it, but the cyber debates, and someone's gonna, and there's it's kind of like a rap battle.
Right.
Ooh, he came with the but it's not
like
necessarily.
WWF.
It's like WWF, and it's not taking us anywhere. So have these discussions in a back room, and we agree on certain rules.
Right.
And when you can demonstrate it, it's like a peer review process. When you can demonstrate it, that this is the information that is that has passed all these rules, then it gets moved up. And at the same time, it's like if it's not really that important, you're probably not going to have that many minds, that many well thought of minds, at least, that are going to even be thinking about it anyway. So it won't be moved forward. So it's just this natural kind of selecting for importance and accuracy process. That's
because,
genius.
because I'm in Brooklyn. Oh, I was in Brooklyn, and I was, in the heart of most of these debates. It's right in Harlem, a couple train stops away from me, and I've gone to them. And if you look at the audience there, you have two groups of people who believe whatever speaker is saying. They believe it with all their heart and soul, and the debate goes on. Both sides feel like they won. Almost every single one that I've gone to, the outcome is that both sides feel like that they destroyed the other side. It's useless. It's a waste of money and a waste of time, and it causes trouble because then the people are kind of more angry at each other now. Black folks are more angry at each other, and nobody has been brought out to be that you're actually incorrect. And this is what it is. It's just that at the end of the debate, everybody's crowding around their speaker and cheering them on.
And what's worse is that you don't have what you ultimately want. Is a synthesis, which is, wait a minute, I hadn't considered
don't get
that
it at all. I've never seen that happen.
And on the other side, I hadn't considered that. You know what? Probably this is what's true, and which is some of what you said, some of what I've said, and something that we'd never thought of before. Oh my God! And it supports some of what each of us has said. I don't think that's ever happened. That's what you want, though, because if you don't have that, you're not moving forward.
And the problem is that there's no real rules. It's just that the way it's set up, it's set up like a elementary school debate, kind of play. You speak, then they speak. You ask a question, then they ask a question. You answer, then they answer. You say one more thing, they say one more thing, and that's it. And nothing is learned. Now, if we all were sitting down and writing it out and following a set of rules, you have to have, we all have to agree on sources. Like they do in Wikipedia, we all have to agree on what is a proper source, what is allowed to be logically correct and logically incorrect, what makes sense across the board, and what doesn't make sense across the board, and also what is the goal. What's our goal? Are we trying to? Because funny story, I've being in Harlem. Oftentimes there are Hebrew Israelites that be on the corner saying what they say, and I oftentimes I'll stand and listen to what they're saying, and it's very interesting because a lot of times they verbally attack white people, and you don't generally see black people outside, verbally attacking people, white women and white men. And I see that, or if a black person and a white person in a sexual arrangement, if they walk past, they'll really go in on them, and it's interesting.
Oh, nice, nice.
But one time, I was there with my wife Alma. We were there well early on into our relationship, and I was telling her who they were, and so we went and we're watching them, and they started to talk about how black people need to not do much. We need to just wait until what's going to happen is God is going to come down and he's going to fix everything. He's gonna put us back on top. And they linked me in with them. They said, you're not African, you're American, like the Indians. And I'm like, okay, I didn't have any issue with that. That's cool. Then they pointed to Amma and they said, but you're not. You're a African. And they went on to say that in fact, we Americans are going to enslave the Africans, and we're going to enslave the rest of the world. So now if we had a situation where all of our thinkers and all of our intellectuals said the goal needs to be black people across the board, coiled hair black people, maybe straight hair black people, maybe not. We could talk about that. And all of us need to be in a position where we are happy, where we are building for ourselves, and where we are no longer economically, physically, enslaved to the white people. That should be our goal. And it should be that we're going to do it, not wait for somebody else to do it. Now, if that's the goal,
right.
then what will happen is automatically those people who say that, no, actually, only these kind of black people are good, and in fact, we're not going to do anything but wait for God to come back, automatically they're going to be X'd out of the equation.
Conversation.
And maybe,
right.
Yeah, and maybe the more thoughtful ones out of them will X themselves out of their group and come over to our side to use their brain power to situate us better.
Right.
But without that, without those rules and regulations, these debates go nowhere. They just make money for the people who is which is it's just cool. We want to make some money. That's cool too. But in the grand scheme of things, it's not getting us anywhere.
Right.
It's just fun.
Absolutely.
It feels good for a little while, but
yeah,
we're still left with the problem and no solution.
That's
and
it.
people more entrenched in their nonsense.
Right. It's no different than going to church on Sunday morning and
no
getting happy and jumping up and down, enjoying the music, and then we leave, and then we're all faced with the same situation when we exit. Let me do a program ID and then warn about the live stream. This is the Counter Racist Evolving Engineer Program, the CREE program. We're having Kofi, the founder of World Afropedia, on to discuss a number of issues. We've been discussing pretty much the entire program so far, the coming ecliptic age and what we should do about it, and how white folks are preparing for it and how we should prepare for it. And now we've been transitioning into talking about how to catalog useful information about who we are and what we should do, who we are in terms of what's good for us, our internal makeup, and what's good for us. And as we've been doing that, we've been talking about cataloging it on digital encyclopedias and hopefully physical encyclopedias. Kofi has created one called World Afropedia, and he's going to begin to, and we talked about how to make that constructive, what the rules of engagement are, and so as we discuss that, we're going to talk about how Wikipedia, which is the primary source of the reference source probably on the planet now because most people are online, how they're constructed and how facts are put forward, how they agree upon what are the facts, and then therefore becomes the source of validation throughout the world. So I don't know that much about it. I know that there are rules. I know that there are back rooms, and I know that there are people. I know it's very difficult. It's a very racist site, of course. Having so much authority, it's got to work in a very racist way. So Kofi was going to explain to us, give us a walkthrough on how Wikipedia works and how racism works on Wikipedia. Now, if you plan on listening to this program after the 2-hour mark, so if you're on the East Coast after 9 p.m., it's going to abruptly cut off unless you call in. If you are in the Central Time Zone after the 8 p.m. mark, it's going to do the same thing. And then here on the West Coast in the Pacific Time Zone, it's going to cut off at 7 p.m. And if you want to continue hearing, if you want to call in and ask questions or comment, you'll need to call in. So let me give you that number if you're not looking at it online. I'll repeat it so you can run and get a pen. It's 646-478-4516. Once again, 646-478-4516. Okay, so now Kofi's going to give us an outline. How does this work? He's going to give us a little sketch. How does Wikipedia work, Kofi?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so in 2001, there was people that was making even earlier at the start of the internet, there were people making software to put encyclopedias on the internet, and eventually a company, a bunch of programmers came out called the Wikimedia Foundation, the MediaWiki Foundation. And they made a software, they call it MediaWiki, where you can take that software and you can install it on your web server and you can have your own encyclopedia. By 2001, a company came along and said, I think we should take that software and make a global database of data that, people can use. And so from there, so little by little, people around the world started to add data in there. And today you now have Wikipedia in 287 languages and with millions of articles in many different languages. But it's not just random. It's not just people putting an article out there and then grats, you have an article. No, there's a hierarchy of people inside the Wikipedia website. There's a hierarchy of people, all the way from the boss of the bosses at the top who makes all the choices down to just regular people who can write articles. Now, if somebody in the hierarchy flags what you said in an article, what happens is people that are in power, they get notified that you flagged an article for whatever. You might flag it because it's biased. You might say, "Oh, this article is biased, so it needs to be changed." It might be that your article has the wrong point of view, because they say that if you are writing and you're a part of what you're writing, suppose you're writing about an organization and you're a part of that organization, they say that your point of view is skewed, and so you can't do that, and we're going to erase what you said. And this happens, and this happens on different semi-hidden pages that if you just look at Wikipedia, you won't know about these pages. But if you're a part of the site and you're an editor and you know where to look, you can see what they're debating and what they're talking about and who's saying it and when. If you don't, you'll just go along the internet and you might search for something, and Wikipedia will come up, and that'll be your information. You won't know who wrote it. You won't know why they wrote it. You don't know what they're trying to do, but you'll just take that information. And they say that Wikipedia is not for Wikipedia is not for people to use to. It's not to tell truths about the world and about history and all of that. All it's used for is to basically compile what's already accepted in the world and put it in a nice polished package for people to read. But that's not how it works. How it works, if you search for anything, Wikipedia is generally the first link that comes up. If you search for search for a country, if you search for a historical event, if you search for a system, if you search for racism, Wikipedia will probably be the first, second, or third thing that comes up. So even though they say they're not there to teach people about true and false and reality and faulty, they do that. People accept it as that. And because the people in charge are white supremacists, all that's inside Wikipedia is just going to be there to spread white supremacy in one way or another. I've met a lot of people who have come face to face with that and been banned from them, been berated by them, been laughed off of the site. Like throughout the years that I've been writing on World Afropedia, I've come across so many people, and I ask them, why are you still on there then? And I never really get a good answer. They just outside of the fact that since Wikipedia is the number one site, I gotta stay here and I gotta continue to try to push my narrative on them, but it will never work.
Right. It'll never work. And so that kind of gets to what you were saying about ways to mitigate it. You can't do it there. You cannot do it at Wikipedia. You cannot transform racism from the inside. That's just an impossible. That's like trying. You can't do it.
President Obama.
Set.
You can't change it from the inside. It's once you're in, or you're gonna be driven to do what's already being done. You cannot change it from the inside. It's impossible.
That just goes to basic physics, right? If you have a closed system, the only elements that you can use within that system are the things that are within that system. It's a closed system. So if you're in Wikipedia, there are no elements inside of Wikipedia from which you can transform Wikipedia. Now, you could do something similar to what we talked about before, which is you could merge that DNA with something else, but you'd have to go outside and get something that's very effective in transforming. It could be a virus, something like that, but you can't. It's a closed system. You cannot. But Wiki is a closed system. You can't change it from the inside. So
no.
And so therefore, you were going to say,
unless you move up in the ranks and then change it that way, but you won't move up in the ranks unless you're along the same thought process of them. So one of the ways that I thought to mitigate it is to build my own wiki, and one of two things can happen. One of two things can happen that I thought, and either one I'm okay with. One was that people are going to get driven away from Black people particularly. White people, non-white people in general, are going to be driven away from Wikipedia because because of the rules. The rules stipulate that you can only write something if you have a source for it. And you can only use a source that they will accept. You can only use a source that they will accept. And if they don't like your source, they will erase what you wrote. Now, what's their formula for accepting a source or not? It has to be. Maybe you could talk more about that, CREE, because you explained it really well. But if they don't accept the source, they will erase it. And so I thought, okay, I'll make my own, and those people that get ran off of it, a percentage of them will come eventually and start writing on World Afropedia. Now, what will happen is eventually people will start to see when they search for things, they'll see Wikipedia's article, and they'll see an article that I wrote, or that anybody wrote on World Afropedia, and they'll be able to compare it, and they'll be able to take what they want. And so what will happen is eventually, if you have two articles about racism come up when you search for racism in Google, people will be able to compare. People around the world will be able to compare and take what they want and what they accept as true. And then what will happen is internally in Wikipedia, they'll also start to debate about, all this information is over there, and it makes more sense than what we have over here, or or not. But either way, it'll cause a debate within it, and it'll cause a break in their ranks of what's right and what's wrong. And so they'll be forced to change the lies that they have there, or just stay with the lies. That's the first scenario that could happen. The second scenario is that Black people will just stop using that and avoid it, maybe even block it from their internet so it won't come up anymore, because World Afropedia will be there as something that they can accept as true. So either one of those scenarios can come to mitigate the damage that Wikipedia is doing, and either one works for me.
Outstanding. So well thought out, so logical. Outstanding. Yeah, it's clear. If you want to go through the logic of why you don't want to engage in their process of them determining what is an acceptable source, if you're a Black person, I would suggest that you listen to the first program. We kind of discussed it. We've got about an hour and 15 minutes left on this program, and we're going to try to take, if there are people who want to call in. There are a lot of listeners, but no one with a hand up. We're going to try to take callers the last half hour. So we've got about 45 minutes, and we still have a number of things that we're trying to cover. I guess a lot of people really want to know about this cryptocurrency, the different types that there are, and how we might be able to go about, how Black folks might be able to take this new technology and make it work for us in terms of coming out from under our oppression. So it's very similar to what we kind of just discussed with Afropedia, is to take this new technology and make it work for us. So how do we take this new technology of cryptocurrency and make it work for us?
Yeah. Moving right along too. I'm looking at the topics, and we're making good time. So you're very good. So cryptocurrency, we talked briefly, not briefly, we talked pretty in depth about it in the last program, and basically what it is it's the digitization of money. If you can think about how video used to be on tapes and on DVDs, and how music used to be on tapes and on CDs and so on, now you don't even have to have those. You don't even have to have those physical pieces of hardware to look at a movie. You can simply download it from somewhere else and watch it and keep it or not. Money is quickly going the same way digitally, and what cryptocurrency is simply units of money which can be broken down, hundreds of millions of times and distributed, where the U.S. dollar can be broken down 100 times into 100 pennies and distributed wherever. A Bitcoin, which is one type of cryptocurrency, just like how the U.S. dollar is one type of money, one type of global currency, Bitcoin can be broken down 100 million times and distributed like that. The base unit of Bitcoin is called the Satoshi, where the base unit of the American money is called the penny. And there are countless cryptocurrencies out there. A couple years ago, I was in communication with a brother in Atlanta, and he had the idea to make a new kind of cryptocurrency, and he paid a programmer to make it for him, and he called it Africoin. Now I was super excited about that, because at the time I was like, yeah, this is the future. We need to get on this. And so I went in with him to try to get it developed and get it out there. But what happened was, because that individual, he wasn't a programmer. So the person who made the program, well, he seemed to me like a white person. He was from South America, but he was a white person as far as I could tell, and he was doing shady things, and eventually
shady, cloudy things. Because that platform
he
again.
was doing very cloudy things. Yes, he was doing cloudy things, densely clouded things, because he was the only programmer on the team. And eventually, what happened was, in fact, from the beginning, the guy that I was with didn't get the source code, which is the code that the program is written with. He didn't get the source code, and so what happened was, eventually it got really difficult to do anything with it, and it got to the point where it just nobody was using it anymore. Nobody was mining it. Nobody was. It just stopped being used, and so that that was a failure for the development of it. And
so Kofi, can I ask you a question? Before, we got a little echo, just to let you know. Let me go back to the parts that I need clarification for, because I'm sure I'm not the only one who needs clarification. So as we were discussing it last time, we understand that this is an agreed-upon medium of exchange, any cryptocurrency, say, for instance, Bitcoin or Africoin, whatever you're talking about. And it is digital, it is virtual, and it is based on programming. Got that part. And we talked about how there's a finite amount of it, and this gets to what I want to ask you. There's a finite amount of each one of these currencies, so let's just stick with Bitcoin, because you explained that to us last time. So there's a finite amount of Bitcoins in existence, but except that when we say in existence, that's like saying there are only a finite number of circles that are drawn on the board. Now, when you tell me something like there are only a certain amount of circles that are drawn on the board and those are the only ones that I can use, I'm also thinking about the fact that there still is a chalkboard and there's still chalk. And so, there's always this question of, well, I know you told me that there are only going to be this number of circles drawn on the chalkboard, and this is all we're going to use. We've already decided there's no more. But still in the back of my mind, and I'm sure other people's mind, is as long as there's chalk and there's chalkboard, somebody can draw more circles on the board. And so you were saying that the cryptocurrency equivalent of that, of the restriction of that is that people have to mine these things. Okay, now you said that there's certain servers that are designated to find these cryptocurrencies, and after a certain amount of time, they won't be able to find anymore, which is like mining. Can you please explain the process of what mining is? What does that mean, and who gets to mine it? Can just anybody get a server
Definitely.
and try to find it? Go ahead.
Definitely. Great question. See, it keeps me in line because I could, So okay, so going back to what you were the analogy of the circles, if that's what we were talking about, yes, circles. You could easily go buy some chalk and make some more circles. But in the terms of cryptocurrency, imagine you build a robot and you program this robot to build another robot, and then you program that to keep going forever until you build a certain amount of robots, and then you lock down the robot where it can't be tampered with anymore, because there are, you give everybody a key on Earth, you give everybody a key to it, and the only way that robot can be tampered with is if everybody with the key agrees that we need to tamper with it now. Okay, that's the way Bitcoin. That's the way that Bitcoin, the Bitcoin, and most other cryptocurrencies work. That it was programmed a certain way, and it was released to the open source, which means that everybody who can program are in control of it. And so any changes that are made have to be agreed upon by the people who has to be agreed upon by the people who are dealing with the programming code. So in essence, it can't be changed to make more later on, because that's not in the programming. The only thing that can be changed is somebody can make a new system and choose to make more if they wanted to. But once a cryptocurrency is set and sent out there and compiled and starts running, it can't be changed unless all of the programmers agree. Now,
wait. All of the programmers on planet Earth, or are all?
Okay.
I'm not.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah. The way you mine. Okay. So not all the programmers on planet Earth, but to use Bitcoin, you have to have what's called a wallet. Now, the wallet has the wallet you're using can only be you can only send money to somebody using the same wallet as you. So suppose we're using Bitcoin wallet version 1.0, and then I say, I don't like how this is running. I'm going to make another Bitcoin wallet version 1.5, and this time, instead of having this many Bitcoins on Earth, I'm going to have 10 more. Now, I'm using a whole new wallet now. I can't send money back and forth to the people that are using 1.0. Are you following? So if somebody came along and said, I'm going to change it and I'm going to make more, I, using wallet version 1.0, can just say, well, I'm not going to use your new software that you made. And all of us who like Bitcoin the way that it is right now, we're going to all agree that, we're not going to use that. So you can have your 1.5 and you can use all of your new cryptocurrencies all you want, but it's not going to affect us, because it's like we're on this fork of the software, and you're on that one. So everything you do doesn't affect us. Am I making sense, CREE?
Well, that makes sense, because I understand that even just with regular currency. People don't have to agree to use. I mean, anybody can issue a new currency anywhere on Earth, and people can say, I don't want to use your currency. We're going to use this right here. So I get it just in that term. I guess where I'm still confused is this mining process. Who? Yeah.
I was going to get into that, but okay. I just wanted, okay, so who can mine? Anybody can mine. Anybody. You can start right now. If you knew how, you can start right now if you wanted to. But what happens is you have to buy certain hardware. You have to buy you have to buy something called a ASIC, which is application specific circuit, integrated circuit. ASIC circuit, and what that does is it is a piece of computer technology that's only designed to mine Bitcoin. What's mining Bitcoin? Mining Bitcoin is basically connecting to that program that was written in 2011. The program was written to say every 10 minutes you should release this much amount of Bitcoin. And the way they release it is the program makes a cryptographic code, and the computers that are part of the Bitcoin network, everybody's computer who says I want to be a miner, you devote your you connect your computer to this network, and you start to try to crack that code. Let's say that the computer system says I'm going to release a Bitcoin right now, and the code is going to be 123. Well, we don't know that the code is 123, so everybody's computer is going to keep running random numbers until it finds 123. It'll say 111, 112, 113, XYZ until it stumbles on the right series of numbers, and then that amount of Bitcoin is going to be released to everybody who was working to crack it. So if there was 100 people working to crack that code, all of those 100 people all of those Bitcoin are gonna split amongst those people. Am I making sense?
Oh, yeah. Everybody wouldn't get just that amount; they just get that subdivided amount. Okay.
Right, and since it could split 100 million times, it's divided like that amongst however many people are doing it. That's basically what mining is. Mining is brute force checking random number sequences until you get the right number sequence, and then that amount of currency is released. Now, how does
what is restricting the number of people who mine? What is restricting it? Just the cost? It's very expensive to have that hardware to do that, or what? Why is that?
What's restricting it? It's expensive. Yeah, it's expensive. It takes electricity, so your electricity bill will go up. You have to keep on upgrading the hardware, because as more people use it, the codes become harder and harder and harder to crack. The computer that's releasing the codes, the software that's releasing the codes, it knows how many people are mining. So it says, okay, there are 10 million people mining right now. So I need to make the code this complex so that it will take them 10 minutes amongst them to crack the code. And then it says, oh, okay, now there's 11 million people, so I got to make the code a little bit more complex. Oh, now there's 12 million, a little bit more complex. And then it keeps going like that until there's no more coins released.
So this is empirical, meaning that there's some sort of academic literature out there that predicts how long it will take to identify a number of a certain length. And not only that.
That's in the Bitcoin source code. All that is in the source code.
Okay. And they got that from, they were able to put that in the source code from just information technology that has built up over the last however many years, 70 or 80 years that computers have been in effect. So they know just based on computing speed, especially, I guess it depends on whatever the computing speed is of a particular time, because computing speed now is much faster than it was 20, 30 years ago, so I guess it goes up. So based on a certain, go ahead.
No, not quite what you're saying. What it is it's an algorithm that says, okay, every time a set of coins are released, the amount of computers that are mining is counted by the software. They count how many people, and they quantify how much computer power there is. So they might say that there is X amount of computer power being used. So now we need to adapt to that computer power, and since X amount of computer power since X amount, how you doing? Go in the room.
No, that's okay.
Since X amount of computer power was used to crack that code, since there's this much now, we need to up the code. We need to up the cryptology to be able to still take 10 minutes, because since now there's this much more computing power, it's going to be the coins are going to be released faster. So we need to adapt. If I'm not making sense,
no, it totally makes sense. No. It totally makes sense. I think I did understand it that way, but I was trying to get to I was trying to start from scratch, the fundamental thing, which is that you know, in other words, what was the basis for knowing how long it would take to hit on the right sequence of numbers based on even one computer? In other words, if it's a 3-digit number and it's completely random, how did they know how long it would take one computer to hit that proper 3 different digit sequence? You know, and then if it's one. Yeah, go ahead. Mm-hmm.
In the beginning, people were using their computer to do it, and it might have taken like 1 second to instead of 10 minutes, it might have taken 1 second. So after it took 1 second, the algorithm would recognize, hey, that didn't take 10 minutes. So now the next one, let me change the code so that amount of computing power will take 20 minutes. So that way it'll even out. The average will even out. So then the cryptology code is going to be a lot more complex. So now it's going to take 20 minutes to crack the code. And then when you look at the overall average, the average time that Bitcoin takes to be released is 10 minutes, because it keeps on shifting. It keeps on shifting the code so that it averages out to 10 minutes. Okay.
So it's adjusting itself. It's adjusting itself all the time.
It's constantly adjusting itself.
It learns itself. So it's saying, this is taking, you know, and it probably like learns itself in between. Like, so in between, they don't wait till the whole thing is over. They say, oh, wait a minute, the rate that this is happening is too fast. They're, you know, I get it. I get it.
And in the beginning, people were using their processor, their graphics card, and so and because of that, and for a long time, a small amount of people were mining and getting the Bitcoin out until people started to catch on, and more people started to use it, and smarter people started to make processing units that would be able to crack codes faster. And then what happened was it was almost an arms race that happened in like 2011, where they were like, you know, people who are able to create circuits. There were people all over the world that were making different circuits that worked better than the people before. And those people became companies. And so now there's big companies that are around that grew from that arms race, from people, oh, so-and-so company just made a better circuit, I'm going to buy theirs. So-and-so made a better one, I'm going to buy theirs. And from that arms race, they were able to generate enough money to be able to make big-time companies where they're making big-time mainframe miners, mining computers that are just all devoted to mining cryptocurrency. And therein lies what stops people from mining. Nowadays, it's tough to get into mining Bitcoin and make any money, because you'd have to spend a few $1,000s to get technology that can even compete with the other people's technology. And if you do it at the wrong time, suppose you buy the most state-of-the-art piece of mining tech, and then 2 weeks later somebody invents a new one. You still have your $5,000 that you spent on this machine, and now it's obsolete. And if you don't have the money to keep up, you're just gonna get left behind. And that's where not everybody can do it. Not everybody has the money to buy into it and start mining. Not everybody has an electric bill that they're willing to make go higher than it is already. Some people have unlimited electricity.
Well, no. Imagine if you just dedicated, and it's not totally free, but imagine if you had solar energy, like you just built your solar. It was totally powered by solar power.
Yeah.
And the batteries. But they're still costing the batteries. because you have to store the solar power on the batteries, and the batteries have to be, have to have maintenance. You have to upkeep them, but it's less than what you have to pay to the electric company. This is really interesting. And of course, if you're on the equator, so now here we go, right? So if you're on the equator and you're doing it, you got more sun to deal with.
So ostensibly, what's happening is you're converting energy, whether it's coal energy, whether it's solar energy, whether it's oil energy. You're converting this energy into money, just directly, because however much energy you can power, it gets converted into money directly, and yeah, that's where a lot of the benefit of this technology comes from. If people can find a way to, if the whole world begins to run on that kind of technology, instead of this false, paper money that some white person chooses to print out at any given time, it takes the monetary power from where it is right now, which is Washington, London, wherever, and it kind of distributes it. It can potentially distribute it amongst people more reasonably between people, as opposed to just being concentrated in certain centers around the planet. That's one of the benefits. That's one of the potential benefits to this technology in the future.
Got it.
It's also one of the reasons why there are a lot of people that are like really go hards for this, like a new religion almost. If you read some of these forums of how these people talk about it, it's almost like a new religion, that people are just, oh my God, this is so important. This is going to change the world. It's going to end poverty. Blah 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 blah.
Whoa.
And we're dealing with.
Explain that to me. So how are they saying it's going to end poverty? What's that about?
Well, okay.
Talk to me about that.
The reason why people are poor right now around the earth is because of the resources are being. Okay, so you have white people in America that have the most powerful currency on earth, the U.S. dollar, and they can print as much as they want, and they can say, hey, I want all this gold, and I'm just going to give you this load of paper money that I just printed 5 minutes ago, and you give me that. So automatically, the people who are in control of printing the money are the most rich, and the people who are not in control of printing the money are the most poor. Since in Zimbabwe, I have all of these resources, but I don't have any money. I can't, I'm going to starve to death because I have gold, I have oil, I have all these resources, but I don't have control of money. So because the world runs on money, I have to live at the whims of the people who can control money. Being that this cryptocurrency can potentially is no longer determined by some people in Washington or wherever of how much it's worth, how much it's printed out. It's no longer controlled by them. It's controlled by just this algorithm, and it's powered by converting energy into money. Because of that, anybody who can mine can can have their own money. Now, suppose I build an algorithm that runs on solar power, and the algorithm is somehow linked to something that black people are doing. So in such a way that only in such a way that we control it in Africa, and that we'll only in Africa and southern U.S., the Caribbean, we control this money, and we'll only sell you our resources if you buy it from us in our currency. And if you choose not to use that currency, then you're gonna have to just go get your resources from elsewhere. What will happen? The reason why they say it's gonna end poverty and change the world is because it's allowing people to control their destinies, and no longer be at the whims of the West, basically. Does that make sense?
It does. But it just seems like I'm not sure that that's any different than currency is today, because, people can issue currency, like you've heard Fuller talk about, well, I see your money. It's very pretty money, and it has your picture on it. You know what I mean? But I say it's not worth very much. You know, still there's some other kinds of things that go into whether or not a currency is valued. Because anybody can make a currency. This is just a more seemingly a little less expensive to make. Explain to me what I'm missing.
Okay, explain in how it's different than other currency.
How is it different? Why does it, just because an algorithm generates this currency as opposed to a printing office and a government, people are behind either one. Just because it's a printing office and a government, how is it that the algorithm somehow is going to generate a currency that has intrinsic value that doesn't have to be recognized by the most powerful people, whereas the other kind does? I'm not seeing the difference.
Okay, so if you look at the Zimbabwe money, recently, white people around the world have decided that Zimbabwe is a bad country, President Mugabe is bad, and we need to do whatever we can to hurt those people. What happened was eventually the Zimbabwe money lost all its value. It inflated to the point where people, similar to what the history books say what happened in Germany before World War II, where you were taking barrels of money to the store to get a loaf of bread or using money to warm up your house. That sort of thing happened recently in Zimbabwe. It's called hyperinflation. And that happened because some people didn't like another group of people. And what happened was that there was a lot of poverty in Zimbabwe. A lot of people starved. A lot of people, died because their money was valueless. That's impossible. That is impossible. That can't happen with cryptocurrency because if white people say, I don't like you, you know what I mean? Unless they all say it together and other people around the world say, I'm going to stop using your cryptocurrency. I'm going to stop using Bitcoin. Let's say everybody agreed right now that they're going to stop using it. That's the only thing that could make the value drop. Is that if people around, there's no longer any economic professor that can say, this is what needs to be done, and then the value of it drops. That can't happen with this cryptocurrency because nobody controls it. Once the algorithm is running, it can't be changed. Whereas,
I wonder if we know it. See, this is exposing my gaps in knowledge about how money works generally, because it was my impression that the value of any particular currency today, whether it's the yen, the won, the ruble or whatever, the lira, the pound, the dollar, all of these things, the value is not set by a person or a group of people who say this is what it is. My understanding is that it is a reflection of what it is able to purchase in the market. It is actually a reflection of what billions of people are doing on the planet anyway. So I guess if that is true, and I would need to be corrected by somebody who knows a little bit more about economics, and Stephen Welch, if you ever happen to be listening to this, you're going to need to correct this. In other words, if the value of currency is just like the definition of a word, the definition of a word in a dictionary is supposed to be reflective of how the people are actually using it. There are these lexicographers that go around and see how a word is being used, and from that they say, well, this is what it means, and then they put it in a dictionary. It was my understanding that the people who set the value for currency are doing it that way. In other words, this is what it's able to purchase. A won is able to purchase this much of a house. A dollar is able to purchase this much of a house. And therefore, here is the relative value of a dollar to a won. If that is how currency is set, and that therefore requires a kind of consensus based on the activity of people, that people are voting with their feet, how is that different than cryptocurrency? If that makes sense.
The question then becomes, why is the yuan and the dollar able to purchase this much of a house? Versus the Zimbabwe dollar able to purchase this much of a house, and the answer comes in what the money is backed by. Okay, the U.S. dollar is backed by the U.S. Military, and if there was no U.S. military, there'd be no U.S. dollar. So as the U.S. Military goes on its war campaigns to destroy people who want to do something differently, the value of the dollar goes up. So, for instance, when Saddam Hussein was going to stop using the U.S. dollar to sell his oil and start using his own dollar, that would have made the value of the dollar go down because less people would be using it. Like you said, the amount of people that's using it would have went down. And so the U.S. government went and collapsed his government, and the U.S. dollar went up since then. That can't be done. There's no central authority that runs a cryptocurrency, that runs Bitcoin, for instance.
There's no army. That's what you're saying.
There's no army behind it.
That's backing. So there's no physical propping up of it.
Its value simply comes from people using it, and from the fact that it's not unlimited. And being that it's not unlimited means that eventually all of them are going to be out there. Eventually, all of the Bitcoins that exist are going to be in the world, and so because it's scarce, because it's not unlimited, it can't be inflated like how the Zimbabwe money does. It's only going to go up in value as long as people are using it, and that's a major difference between paper money, physical money, and digital money. Now the downside is that.
No, go ahead.
The downside is that if people don't believe in it, also that's going to be it for it. But that goes for any type of currency. Once people don't believe in it anymore, then that's it. It's valueless at that point.
Now let me ask you this question. Well, once even now, but especially when all of them have been released and they're out there, what would stop a particular group of powerful people from prohibiting its use in commerce? Why wouldn't somebody be able to just... Because there's still this question of just how honest people are being about the algorithm. In other words, I'm just taking your word that it's self-limiting. I'm taking your word that it can't be cracked. I'm taking your word that no one can track this down. But suppose there was a powerful government that was able to identify this particular cryptocurrency, whatever it is, let's call it Bitcoin for right now, and they say this is not to be used, and if we see that you're conducting cyber e-commerce with this currency, we're going to put you in jail, or we're going to kill your firstborn or something.
Yeah.
First of all, is that possible?
Yes.
Yeah,
no. Okay. First, yes, it's possible. It's been done all the time when people try to make different currencies. If, say, the U.S. government right now said this currency is illegal and anybody who uses it is, that's it for you, then what will happen is immediately, people around the country will drop it and its value will plummet. Now, there will also be people around the country who are going to say, I don't agree with what the American government is saying. There's going to be also people around the world who are heavily invested in it and are going to say the same thing, and they're going to work to encrypt it better. And it's going to be another arms race going on now. The American government... You can't just
stop that with a war. You just can't stop that with the war because it's just too disparate. There's too many different people all over the planet.
Right, there's people all over the earth using it, and there's programmers all over the earth that are trying to do things to keep it hidden, to keep it from being open for the U.S. government to do that too. And even if they did successfully end Bitcoin, somebody's going to just make another one, which is a little bit more hidden and encrypted, and it's going to keep happening because this is just a new technological platform. Bitcoin is just the first one, the first of many. If that is successfully opened up and cracked and outlawed, somebody's just going to make another one because for the first 3 years of Bitcoin's run, there were people that was on the internet buying drugs, buying prostitutes, doing all kind of stuff. I read somewhere that somebody tried to put a hit out on somebody else and get them killed, and and that black market is going to always black market that that cracker market is going to always exist. We got to find a good term for that. But that market is going to always exist where people are going to do underhanded things, and and there's always going to be people who are going to try to get over. So the U.S. government can say what they want, but once they do that, they're going to set off a whole bunch of people and a whole bunch of groups around the world of trying to fight them, because people are heavily investing in this right now. There's people with millions of dollars in this, and they're like, I'm rich now. I'm not trying to not be rich anymore, and they're going to fight it. So the U.S. government can choose to do that, and some governments have tried to do it around the world. The Thai government in Thailand tried to outlaw it, and people were, still using it because, but the Thai government is not the U.S. government, but just say some governments have tried to outlaw it and they haven't been able to as yet. And the U.S. government.
Even if all the white folks on the complete planet, because that's really the only government there is right now, is the white nation.
Okay.
They play games with. Okay, so even if all the white folks on the entire planet said, we don't want this, whatever this new derivation, this Africoin, stop it, and we're going to go after it, and we're going to employ all of our technology, all our smartest minds to crack this, break this, identify these people who are using it, and come after them. Even if they did that, that would be a tough thing to do because.
And they'd be putting their cards out there, because then they'd be saying, in fact, I don't want y'all to be independent, and I'm saying it right now.
There
and so all of these black people who say, oh, it's a free world and we just got to try, all of them aren't going to be able to say that anymore, and they're gonna kind of mobilize us. They're gonna mobilize. Once somebody powerful attacks something like this, you're gonna mobilize all the people to say, oh, okay, so all of those conspiracy nuts are not nuts. They're actually smart, and they're actually light years ahead of us. So now we all need to work together to kind of get this to work, or they're just going to lay down and become slaves again. But either way, it's going to be, the truth is going to be out there of what's happening in the world. So it's a win-win situation. Go ahead and outlaw it and play your card.
Genius. I hope I didn't interrupt you enough to where people didn't get to hear that. That's genius. That is absolute genius. You're absolutely right. And it would be very difficult for them to do, because we're talking about disparate people all over the world, and it's like
take a lot of resources to do that.
Take a lot of resources, and it's really reminding me of the arms race, if you will. I thought that was perfect, between the athletes who use performance-enhancing drugs, or basically the chemists that make performance-enhancing drugs, and the chemists on all of these athletic governing boards that make these tests to try to catch them. You know what I mean?
Right.
You can't, because all they do is they just get new chemists, because there's money in it. They get new chemists to make new drugs that can't be detected by these by the tests that are put out, which are basically chemical tests of these governing boards, and they just play with each other. And the chemists for the athletes are always ahead of the chemists of the governing boards. So it's kind of like, it's kind of like that. It's like you're going to have all these engineers or these computer programmers who are staying ahead of the computer programmers that are trying to crack it. I just don't, you're right. I don't see how they can do it. And you just, because you're banking on the fact that that black people are not smart enough to make these, these other kind of currencies. Yeah. And you won't be able to say
and also that as unified as white people are against non-white people, there's still divisions in their ranks. There's still people who want to be the top white person, and those lowly white people who want to be the top white people are happy about technology like this, because it's opening the market for them to kind of be, now I can be, the boss of the earth, so they're also not going to lay down and say, okay, no, let's outlaw this, unless, sometime in the future, if black folks take over it, and then, we're just super rich now with our crypto, then maybe everybody would agree. But even still, it'd be super difficult at that point to change something. It'd be super difficult.
I have to think about that a little more, because one thing we do know is that white folks are willing to be poor in order to keep us in check. It's a matter of survival for them.
It's true. It's true. And quickly, I don't want it to be thought that I'm saying that this is a major weapon against white supremacy. I don't think it is. I don't think it's a major weapon against white supremacy. I think it's simply a nice tool to use to kind of help us to get on the way. It's not gonna end white supremacy. It's not gonna dethrone white people as the kings and queens of the earth. It's not gonna do that. It's gonna take a lot more than that. But this could be
right.
one of the tools in that if
Sure.
we can use it properly.
Right. It's something that makes it difficult. It's one of the, as you say, tools. One of the elements in our arsenal. So I appreciate that. That it makes life harder for them. And anytime we can help them use or make them use more of their energy and time.
Right.
Oh my God, what time? Okay, it's 6:26. So I only have 2 people on the switchboard, and those are the only, the others dropped off. But the 2 people who are left, I'm assuming because we had really great numbers for the last program, there's probably very high numbers for listeners here, but just I'm not sure who wants to ask a question. But if you are one of those 2 people who wants to ask a question, you can just press that little 1, and then I will know that I should ask you if you have something to say or ask. So, yeah, I see it that way. And, as you said, bottom line is they really, really get threatened. They can physically stop, right? So because computers are physical things, they still require somebody sitting on some land somewhere. And if the physical muscle comes and moves you off that land and takes up the infrastructure, the cable wiring, the fiber optics, that are underneath the ocean and stuff, it's over for you, right?
Right.
You're not going to be able to use Bitcoin if you can't sit down somewhere if you don't have
That's also them showing their card too, which is the alternative that you'll still be showing that you're the devil on earth, and that we all need to focus on you now because this is what you're all about. You can't really lie. You can't really lie anymore and say that it's your own fault that you're living like this.
That's the genius of it. That's absolute genius.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So let's see. What was the last one that we haven't covered so far?
Mandombe.
Oh, yes, that's huge. We need that. Okay, so I kind of followed it. Why was that? Why did I look at it? Well, you were talking about it, and I decided to look at it on World Afropedia. I believe I started to look at it. You wrote an article, and you actually show it. And on your Facebook page, you had like pictures of your own notebook where you were using it, and so I guess what I would say is I never really realized in my head until after last week's program how huge, how mammoth, how totally fundamental is the fact that every basic, what we think of as every basic phenotypical or racial group on this planet has a script associated with them, except for us. We have languages that we speak, tongues that are different, but not a script. Like when you think of the Asian languages, whether it's Korean or Japanese or Chinese, they all have a similarity to them. They have a basic script. When you think of Persians and Arabs, they all have a similarity, a basic script. And then when you think of
all the white people using Latin.
All the white people use that Latin script. But we don't have one. And I think I never realized that is really working in my brain computer to undermine my confidence. I really believe that. My confidence and my ability to think independent of them. I had not realized that until you brought that to my attention 2 weeks ago. So I guess I think I would first ask you, poor pitiful me and people who are like me, and they are legion. I heard you say last week that we used to have a script. Are you referring to Meta-Nature, whether it's in the Americas or... Yeah, talk to me about that. What script did we used to have that's been wiped out?
Well, we used to have many scripts. Meta-Nature is one. We have the scripts in the Tigris-Euphrates Valley. The Harappan people had a script that hasn't even been deciphered yet. You have
I didn't know that.
You have one.
Can we find that on World Afropedia? Okay.
I think so. I've written so many, I don't remember now, but it might be there.
Wow.
But you have, and then you have the Aztec script, then the Mayan script. They had scripts, and even the Inca people. They didn't have a script per se, but they had they had a system of communicating on paper. Basically, it had to do with colors and strings and stuff like that. So I don't know how you would classify that, but it was the same thing basically. So yeah, when I say we had a script, I mean we, as in the equatorial people, had a way to write stuff down and give it to the future generations. And most of them have been either co-opted, as in Medu Neter, co-opted by the Greeks, then co-opted by the Romans, and the Harappan script, I assume, probably was co-opted by the Arabs along with Medu Neter. All of the scripts were either co-opted or erased. And like you said, if you think of all of the powerful people on Earth historically, the Chinese, the Japanese, the Koreans, the Arabs, the all of the Europeans, the Arabs, the Aztecs, they all had a script. And the people who weren't as powerful, the various different Africans that popped up after Kemet fell, the black people in India after Harappa fell, the black people in the Pacific Ocean, they're not as globally powerful. They all have in common the lack of a script. The Australian black people, they all don't have a script, or they lost it or something, but it's not there anymore. What happens is and if you don't have a script, it becomes really difficult to talk to future generations. Okay, if something happens, a great drought, a great storm, a great earthquake, it becomes really hard to pick up the pieces and rebuild yourself, because key people die, key people get lost, and now you have to reinvent everything because you didn't write down exactly how to do it. Whereas in Japan, let a tsunami come and wipe 90% of the people out. They still have stuff written down that won't get touched by a tsunami somewhere, and somebody can read that and bring that, bring everything back to where it was. Whereas if there wasn't a script, that tsunami would have wiped out, all of their history, all of their memories. Having a script allows you, it's almost like taking information and memories and thoughts out of the human brain, out of the collective consciousness, and putting it on paper, putting it on stone, putting it on putting it outside of the body, where people can manipulate it and build on it later on in life. The fact that we black people don't have one, or aren't using one, really hurts us, because even if we do invent something.
Well, let's go back over why it's important that it be our script rather than, because people would say, well, that just means you have to be able to write it down. I mean, if we know English, or the black people in all over Africa that speak white languages, and they can write, as long as they write it in some language, that's just as good, right? So maybe we need to go over that again as to why it's important that it be our own script.
Yeah, good question. Okay,
that gets into the political history of it, because you said that you were going to talk about the history of Mandombe. Why, how did people come to this conclusion that we needed to have our own,
Yeah. Well, there's two aspects to that question. One, sure, everybody on Earth can write in the English Latin script, but what happens is, because that's English and that's England script, it becomes part of the English people's collective consciousness. So not only do they have whatever we're thinking whenever we're writing, they also have whatever they're thinking whenever they're writing. And it's not a bi-directional thing. It's not like we also have all of England's history, thoughts, and words and actions, because they can keep stuff to themselves, Whereas when we write something down, when we write something down in English, it becomes the global English narrative. Whereas if we had a writing system that other people couldn't understand readily, it would become a lot more difficult for them to add it to their collective consciousness. For instance, take Chinese. You have white people that can write and speak in Chinese, but it doesn't really matter because you don't have. It's not all of them that could do that. It's only a few. So you might have white people that can write in Chinese, but if a Chinese person invents a special kind of rocket and writes it down, you're going to need an English person who can write in Chinese and can understand all of that rocket science and all of the intricacies of that Chinese language to be able to translate it and bring it back to his people. It makes it a lot more difficult. Now, keeping that in mind, if there is a great, smart black person who invents something, automatically they're going to take notice of it because it's going to be in their language and they're going to see it. They're going to see it as soon as we see it. It's not like we have secret societies that are going to keep that secret and only release the people who need to know. It's going to be out in the open, and our lack of a script gives us a lack of secrecy and a lack of privacy to do what we need to do and to develop the way we need to develop. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that there's too many people that can, all white folks basically, or not all, because not everybody speaks English, but there's just way too many of them that can know what we're doing, whereas if we had our own, there would only be a select few. Now, I mean, we talked a little bit last program about another reason that it's important to have our own, but and that kind of gets to how it was sent to, I've forgotten what you said the man's name was that it was sent to.
Wabaladio Pi.
Yeah, why don't we go on to that? Say it again. I want to learn how to say it. Wabaladio
Pi.
Wabaladian?
Wabaladio
Pi. Wabaladio Pi. Okay, so it was sent to him in a dream, and then he said why he thought it was sent to him in a dream. So why don't you go on with that?
So as long as white people were running around Africa, destroying things and messing up societies, there were people that were waking up, being prophets and being touched by God and spoken to by whoever you call that great creative force in the universe, and they were being controlled by this force to develop ways to get us out of this bondage. Now, in Congo, where this script was developed and revealed, ever since the 1600s, there have been people who have been going against the Belgian people who've been going against their rule and saying and hinting that there was going to be a time when something was going to be developed that would allow us to separate from white people intellectually, because as we speak their languages and as we write in their scripts, we kind of link ourselves up with them. As you alluded to earlier, you have word sound power. Things you say have power, and the frequencies that the tones you speak on that changes. It changes matter. So as our brain is being changed by the words that we use and the sounds that we make, we are becoming more and more linked to the people that are oppressing us. And so these prophets kept coming all throughout the time that the Europeans were in power in Africa, and they kept alluding that there was going to come a time when black people were going to start speaking and writing in such a way that was going to separate us from white people. And that speech and writing patterns is gonna change the way the brain works in such a way that is gonna allow us to see the world differently and develop things that wouldn't have been developed before. It's gonna allow us to develop sciences, develop arts, develop communication skills that we wouldn't have been able to develop because we might not have had the words for them, or we might not have had the brain capacity to develop these things because we were trashed so much. So one of the early prophets was named Kimpavita. She was in the 1600s. In Belgian annals, talk about her as a witch that they burned at the stake. But the Congolese history speaks of her as a prophet that was bringing the future way of thinking and talking and acting. And there's a church in Congo called Kimbangu Church. It's a Christian denomination kind of that it's like an African Christian church where they take all of these prophets that came along and they explain what they were doing and what they brought, and one of the more recent great figures was Wabaladi Opai, who in the late 70s was given a vision of two of the main symbols of Mandombe, which is one symbol is Pakundungu, which is shaped similar to like how 5 looks on the computer or on a digital clock. It looks like a 5 on a digital clock, and then the other symbol is Pelekete, which is how the 2 looks on a clock and on a digital clock. And from those numbers, from those symbols, all of the other sounds and words are built off of those. So when you write words, you start with either Pakundungu or you start with Pelekete, and you build on that. You either build up or you build down or you build left or you build right, depending on the words you're writing. And what he saw was he was laying in his bed and he looked up and he had bricks on the ceiling. His room was made of bricks, and he looked up and he saw the symbols in the bricks. Because if you look at a brick wall, the bricks aren't lined up. They aren't lined up brick by brick. It's like they're staggered. Right. They're staggered, and so from there, he followed the bricks, and he brought out those 2 symbols. And then as years went on, and he kept seeing those symbols and telling people about them, the intellects around the Kimbangu Church also were getting the visions, and from there Mandombe was developed. Fast forward to today.
Wait a minute, let me get this straight. Let me get this straight. You mean there was a group? At least this is what they say, that there was a group vision. That different people were getting visions on the same script.
Yeah, it's been happening since the 1600s.
Wow.
And all of them all of them have built off each other to get to where we are today. The Kimbangu Church started in the early 1900s, but Mandombe didn't come into it. And they were talking about because the Kimbangu Church started from a man named Simon Kimbangu, who was a he was kind of anti-imperialist in the 20s, and they locked him up from the 1920s to 1950, and he died in prison. But he was the first person to he was the first. He wasn't the first, but he was the originator of that church, and he started talking about what's going to happen in the future. He was making prophecies, writing them down. And there was he had like loads and loads of papers that he was writing when he was in prison that the prison guards couldn't they didn't know what he was writing, so eventually they burnt all of his papers. But I suspect that he was probably writing in some proto form of Mandombe. But after he died is when Mr. Wabaladi Opai started on his journey of walking through the lands of Congo and talking to whoever it was that was bringing him those visions, eventually that script was created, and now the Kimbangu Church, Mandombe is like a major aspect of the church. A lot of their liturgy and their books and their things they write is in Mandombe, and they have classes all over the country where they teach Mandombe to the children, because they know that eventually what's going to happen is a critical mass of people are going to learn the language, and our hive intelligence is going to be impacted by it, and that's going to bring forth all of those new sciences, new technologies, and new ways of doing things. That's going to free us from the troubles that we have. Now, quickly, unlike Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, I think that this is an extremely significant tool in the battle against white supremacy. I don't think it's simply a small, a small tool on our utility belt. I think it's a major tool that when we do adopt it, it's going to have a major impact on our position in the planet.
Well, and I guess what I was going to say is I agree with you, and I'm trying to rationally somehow figure out the words to put forth what my intuitive mind is telling me. And it's sort of in the same way that words, actions that affect matter. But at the same token, seeing things also generates electrical impulses, and which are conducted by chemical reactions also in our brain. I mean, so that when you see a shape or anything, a color, but it does something to your brain. This is why art and music, but this is why visual art is so important. This is why shapes are so important, because it does something. It predisposes you to think certain things. There's just certain shapes that do certain things to your brain. And if our brains are different than white folks to some degree. But the first thing that comes to me is you said those two fundamental shapes. I think I remember looking at that when I was looking at your work. And if you take those two fundamental shapes, the one that looks like a digital 5 and the one that looks like a digital 2, if you superimpose them onto one another, don't you get something that looks sort of like a wheel, very akin to that Nazi symbol?
You can, if you superimpose them in such a way. If you superimpose them if you make, you can make a Nazi symbol out of those two symbols. You can also, but if you superimpose them, it looks more like a digital 8 if you just put one on top of the other. But if you but if you shift them around, you can probably get that symbol.
So there's something about manipulating those shapes to move on to other symbols and sounds that kind of tell you how to move. In other words, an idea moves in counter to one of the other movements, because they do kind of move on a wheel in that way, or they move in concert in an 8. And it will like subconsciously tell you what you're supposed to do with certain ideas, either large or small, to impose. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. And like you said, when you see certain colors, shapes, and so on, it does something to your brain, and that's what the early prophets of Mandombe was talking about. That just us seeing these shapes and seeing these symbols and using them and translating our languages into them is gonna cause a shift in our consciousness. And now this is old people, like from way back in the day, early 1900s, 1800s, 1700s. There's people from way back then saying that when this system is implemented, our whole brain process is going to shift and change. And even taking out the metaphysical aspect of all of this, just the fact that we are doing something separate from the rest of the world is mind-blowing and shifting and paradigm shifting, because we're finally, like, the fact that we're doing something that other people can't do or that other people aren't in control of is a major change than what most of us in America can't even speak a different language than English. So learning a different language and learning a different script. Go ahead.
Let me tell you why I think that its peculiar application to our brains is really important. I think it's really important because if it's simply something that's different, that's supposed to separate us, and as it's introduced newly to us, it'll be introduced newly to white folks. If it's introduced newly to us, and it's introduced newly to them, and there's nothing that makes it easier for us and makes it something that we operate with efficiency and efficacy and beauty and power. If we are not able to manipulate it with that more than white folks, then it doesn't give us, I don't think it gives us any advantage because we have to learn it newly just as they do, and I don't think that they'll be less motivated to learn it than we do, than we are.
I don't think so either. I don't think so either, but quickly, I think that the fact that it came out of our brain, just like the Japanese came out of the Japanese brain, it's going to do something for us that it just won't work for other people. They might be able to write in Arabic, but it's not going to do the same for Europeans that it's doing for the Arabs.
Right. That's my sense. That is my sense. We've got like 8 minutes left, and so I want to make sure we have enough time for you to give your suggestions on how people can make money on the internet, such as you're doing it, and be able to tell us what you're doing to make money on the internet. I put that in the show description, the episode description. Yes. If you want to support Kofi's outstanding work, if you like what you've heard here, he still has to pay his bills. He has to feed his family. He's got a child on the way. If just go spend some money, that you'll be able to find something that's very constructive on either one of his sites. I'll let him pronounce it for you. Afikyiri, Edjua, which I probably butchered it, but it translates roughly into backyard market, and the link's right there in the show description, program description, and it's got a number of things on it. And then he has a marketplace on Amazon, Afropedia on Amazon Marketplace, and you click that. It's got a wide variety of texts, kind of just different kind of text for children of all ages, adults. Got some classic text on there. So make sure you check that out and see if there's something there that you can buy from him to support the very constructive work that he's doing. It's kind of one of a kind. Nobody's really doing the kind of thing that he's doing. But he's making money on the internet, and he wants to tell us in the amount of time that we have left what he thinks, some suggestions. If you want to do that, this is how you would do it.
Yeah. Okay, definitely. Also, you can get an ebook from Mandombe on my Afikyiri Edjua site. www.edjua.com. You can get an ebook that I translated from French into English using whatever tools I could. It's there. But yeah, if to make money on the internet, the internet has come into existence and really opened up the market for us, because you can sell stuff to people and they don't see your face, they don't know you're black, and a lot of people don't check to see who they're buying from. So, if you can get a product out there that other people don't have, you can really clean up. Some suggestions now. You have to always keep your eye open for things that are rare and things you can sell. One time, me and Keone were at Walmart, and we saw this Ethiopian doll. We saw 2 of them, and it was in the clearance. And I just knew that, people would want that because there's so few black dolls out there. And this was a really nice tall doll, about maybe 1.5 feet. So we bought both of them. Both of them were $15. And I took it back and I kept one for my daughter, and we sold the other one for $55. And I generally do that. I keep my eye. We go to thrift shops. We find clothes and books and stuff that people want. And you just keep it. You might be wasting your money on other stuff anyway. You spend your money on what you need to spend it on, and then you keep a small portion of it for different products you might want to resell. And then when you do sell things, don't spend that money again. Keep that money and reinvest it into your business. You can take certain things and you can sit down and you can sell it outside, and then there's also the aspect of cross country selling. There's things that you can get easily in America that other people in other countries can't get, but the markets are there. eBay, Amazon. You can make your own website very easily, and sell it to them. And with Facebook, you can connect to people so easily. You can have people from every country on your connected to them, and you can ask them, "Yo, what do you want? What do you need over there?" And make those deals with people. I've been doing it for about for 5 years now. I went to Ghana in 2011 and searched out people who seemed like they were trustworthy. That's another thing. Big risks yield big rewards. I met people who I thought might be trustworthy, and I made relationships with them. And one of the people that I know over there, I sent money to them to send me African artifacts back, and I got over 300. I gave them some money, and I got about 300 pounds of artifacts back from them. But I had to do that risk first. I had to send them the money and risk that maybe they would run away with it. That's part of the thing with making money online. A lot of times you have to find people that you can trust, and you have to be willing to lose it all. Because if not, you're just going to be stuck in the same position that you're in. Without risk, you don't get any reward. And then take what you have and put it across the markets. If you want to sell books, buy them wholesale, and then open up accounts at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, eBay, Alibris, any market that's there that allows you to open it. Put your stuff across the markets, and then little by little, you will be able to recoup the money back and keep on reinvesting it. A friend of mine told me a good piece of advice the other day. She said, if you want to be a millionaire, there's a theory that you need to have 7 streams of income coming into you. And if you only have one stream of income, which is your job, then you're just going to be stuck where you're at. But if you can have multiple streams of income coming in, you'll be able to really get somewhere in life. And that's what I've been trying to do. I've been trying to get multiple streams of income. That's why I have so many different products that I sell, so many different services that I try to give out to people, because I learned skills in building computers, building websites, and I sell that. You can sell it online, or you can sell it in your community. You just have to be willing to do it. And I see we have 2 minutes left, so maybe we can maybe we could talk about it another time in more great detail. But definitely, you really have to keep your eyes open and be willing to risk losing a little bit of money to make a lot of money. Okay.
Right on. Okay, we'll try to get you back, Kofi. I mean, we packed it in. We had a good audience, but people just wanted to listen, and I respect that too. Again, I can't thank you enough. I totally enjoyed this, and if you're open to doing a part 3, we'll do one. I'll try to get in a couple of other people between now and then we'll have you in back to do a part 3 if that's something that you're open to doing.
Yes, sounds good.
Excellent. Okay, I hope all you folks enjoyed it as much as I did, and I'm going to play my tribute to Peter Brown's mother, and thank Kofi for coming in, and hopefully they don't cut me off before I...
Hey you! And you, the rather brilliant British business leaders out there. I know you've got a gazillion plates to spin and uptillion things on your to-do list, but let me ask you this, Debs of Doggy Daycare Deluxe Newbury and the team in yet-to-be-named tech startup Ipswich, who's taking the time to check your bank fees, That's what I thought.
Britain's better when business is thriving. At HSBC, our best tariff promise ensures you're on the right tariff for your business every year. Search HSBC Business Banking to find out more.
Back to the plate spinning.
HSBC. Together we thrive. For businesses up to £2 million turnover on a small business or electronic banking tariff business current account. Promise based on an annual review of your last 12 months account activity. T's and C's apply. See website.